Chapter 156. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. It could also be understood as being lonely at the top. When a person suddenly became outstanding and was unable to convince others, all kinds of people with malicious intentions would flock to him. The less serious ones would slander him maliciously. The more serious ones would use all sorts of methods to suppress him. It would be best to drag him down and step on him. Only then would they be able to balance themselves and prove themselves. When he became the Azure Dragon's chief, Qin Feng was already mentally prepared. However, he still underestimated the malicious intentions of those people. Inside the Jade Water Cavern, after Qin Feng carefully inspected the surroundings of the lotus pond, Qin Feng's face quickly revealed a trace of a sneer. Is it a formation? Qin Feng's figure turned around at the edge of the lotus pond. Very soon, an extremely unfamiliar formation diagram appeared in his mind. Seal, trap, suppress. Qin Feng pondered inwardly. The function of this strange profound formation diagram was analyzed by Qin Feng in just a few breaths of time. If I'm not wrong, this profound formation should be used to seal the spirit energy here. It seems like all the spirit energy here is absorbed by this formation, fused into the earth veins, penetrated through the earth veins, and tempered the mountain. Who set up this formation? Qin Feng's expression was gloomy. Qin Feng could tell that this profound formation's grade wasn't high. It was at most a grade 2 profound formation. However, this profound formation had a trace of an ancient profound formation diagram, and its function was very mysterious. This strange formation even had the miraculous function of nourishing the earth veins, gathering the essence of the mountain and rivers, and purifying the blessed land. In the long run, not only would it nourish the spirit energy of the mountain and rivers, it would also help the blessed land to automatically upgrade. However, this formation had an extremely huge flaw. Most of the spirit energy in the blessed land would be forcefully absorbed by the formation, and the spirit energy in the blessed land would be forcefully fused into the earth veins. In other words, the spirit energy in the Scarlet Sky Peak would gradually decrease, and in the end, the Scarlet Sky Peak would lose all of its spirit energy in a short period of time. This formation was extremely beneficial to the entire blessed land of the Scarlet Sky Peak, but to Qin Feng, it was extremely harmful. Not only would he be unable to cultivate, but many of the spirit herbs in the spirit garden would also wither. One must know that as the cave master of the Crimson Sky Peak's Jade Water Cavern, Qin Feng was in charge of the numerous apprentice alchemists of the Crimson Sky Peak. He was supposed to take care of all the spirit herbs on the mountain. Qin Feng naturally contributed greatly. If he could cultivate a few more spirit herbs, Qin Feng's time to become a rank 6 disciple would be greatly reduced. On the contrary, if there was any problem with any of the spirit herbs on this mountain, the first person those elders in the herb garden would hold accountable would be none other than Qin Feng, the cave master of the Crimson Sky Peak and Jade Water Cave. This was where Yu Fuchen's brilliance lay. Even if this matter was exposed, not only would the higher-ups of All Stars College not blame him, they would even praise him. It was just that Qin Feng was naturally the sacrificial lamb. This was what Yu Fuchen was most proud of. Something even more vicious was yet to come. Even if Qin Feng reported this matter to All Stars College would still need time to investigate. Only then would they be able to come to a conclusion, and the subsequent actions would also require a lot of time. By the time this period of time passed, 3 months would have already passed. By that time, the first examination of the Azure Dragon Institute would have already begun. Qin Feng would have wasted 3 months of time. How could he obtain high scores during the examination? By that time, Qin Feng would most likely not be able to keep his position as the Azure Dragon Institute's chief. Once he lost his position as the Azure Dragon Institute's chief, if he wanted to take it back, he would have to put in 10 times, or even 100 times the time. For a student who had just entered All Stars College, this was almost fatal. Qin Feng's mind turned and he immediately understood the sinister intentions of the person who had secretly set up the formation. He was trying to ruin his future. Destroying one's future was like killing one's parent. This enmity was absolutely irreconcilable. Rumble. Dust swirled in the air. The 72 gloomy black nails buried underground were immediately exposed to Qin Feng's gaze. Fortunately, I'm proficient in the Tao of formations and was able to see through this sinister plot in time. Otherwise, if it was someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't even know what was going on until they died. Thinking to himself, Qin Feng's eyes revealed a trace of joy. The scheme of the person who had set up the formation was truly sinister to the extreme. However, using a formation to plot against him, a formation grandmaster, was destined to be a wasted effort. His gaze fell on the gloomy black nail under his feet. It was entwined with strands of black fiendish qi. This was an earth fiend nail, refined from a 1,000-year coffin nail. This underground earth vein was like a flying dragon, and this strange formation was like a dragon-locking nail that firmly nailed this earth vein flying dragon. All of the spiritual energy was locked in by this 1,000-year-old earth fiend nail. These 72 earth fiend nails were bathed in the rich mysterious yellow earth qi. After being cleansed by the mysterious yellow earth qi, they already had a trace of a rich and dignified bright yellow color. This had already become a rare treasure. Qin Feng's gaze fell on this formation. At this moment, this formation no longer had the slightest mystery in Qin Feng's eyes. To break it was just a matter of a hand. As long as this mysterious formation was broken, all of the spiritual energy would be released again. Qin Feng slightly raised his hand, and the Xiantian primordial true qi condensed in his palm. As long as he pulled out these 72 earth fiend nails, the rolling spiritual energy would emerge again. But in the next moment Qin Feng's eyes moved. Looking at this formation, Qin Feng suddenly had a new idea. Since this formation can pour into the blessed land, purify the spiritual energy of the blessed land, and raise the grade of the blessed land, I wonder if it can also nurture those precious herbs? A strange idea suddenly appeared in Qin Feng's mind. According to Qin Feng's knowledge, most of the spiritual herbs grew in places rich in spiritual energy. The reason why those spiritual herbs had all kinds of miraculous effects was because they absorbed the essence of the heaven and earth, as well as the essence of the sun and the moon. This formation had a similar effect. It could trap and seal spiritual energy and purify spiritual herbs. Qin Feng looked at this formation, and all kinds of ideas flashed through his mind. This formation gave Qin Feng a kind of inspiration. Qin Feng might be able to modify this formation into a formation that could promote the birth of spiritual herbs. According to Qin Feng's knowledge, every time a spiritual herb was added to the Scarlet Sky Peak, he would receive a certain amount of merit points. The higher the grade of the spiritual herb, the more merit points Qin Feng would receive. All Stars College's first-grade disciple's merit point was 1. If one wanted to be promoted to a second-grade disciple, he would need 5 merit points. If one wanted to be promoted to a third-grade disciple, he would need 10 merit points. If one wanted to be promoted to a fourth-grade disciple, he would need 20 merit points. If one wanted to be promoted to a fifth-grade disciple, he would need 50 merit points. If one wanted to be promoted to a sixth-grade disciple, he would need 100 merit points. Merit points were extremely hard to come by. According to the Medicine King Hall's rules, nurturing 10 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs would only give him 1 merit point. If Qin Feng wanted to be promoted to a sixth-grade disciple, he would need to nurture at least 1,000 stalks of 1,000-year-old spiritual herbs. This was an extremely terrifying number. Smiling bitterly, Qin Feng shook his head and temporarily suppressed this thought. His gaze quickly landed on the 72 earth fiend nails. Currently, the most important thing was to cultivate. Borrowing the spiritual energy of the blessed land, he would be able to quickly cultivate the minor art of cloud and rain and gung metal slaughter art to the 3rd level and above. This is the 3rd update. There's still one more update after midnight. The following updates will be sped up. Brothers, please recommend me. Please bookmark me. Chapter 157. Rumble. Qin Feng stomped his foot, and a huge force stomped on the ground. With a bang, a black and yellow light flew out from the ground. Qin Feng rolled up his sleeves and caught the object. It was a long and slender pitch-black nail with a hint of mysterious yellow light. 1,000-year Earth Fiend nail. Qin Feng held the nail. It was cold to the touch, and a wisp of fiendish aura flowed through his skin into his meridians. His primordial origin true qi surged and refined this wisp of fiendish aura. Good stuff! Qin Feng praised inwardly. 1,000-year Earth Fiend nails were extremely rare, and one was already very precious. There were actually 72 of them here, forming a set. Qin Feng moved, and his sleeves moved like flowing clouds, pulling out the Earth Fiend nails one by one. He glanced at them and stuffed them into the Jade Sea heaven and earth. Wisps of spirit mist flowed out. As the Earth Fiend nails were pulled out, Qin Feng's powerful 5 senses seemed to hear the sound of water splashing out from the spring. This was the sound of spirit qi flowing. It was as if countless spirit qi drilled out from the earth veins, turning into a dense mist that filled the entire Jade Water Cave. At this moment, the spirit qi in the Jade Water Cave was more than 10 times more abundant than before. Qin Feng's primordial origin true qi circulated spontaneously, and all the pores on his body opened up. He bathed in the rich spirit qi as if he was immersed in a hot spring. Qin Feng had an impulse to immediately go into seclusion to cultivate. Qin Feng forcibly suppressed this feeling, and after carefully inspecting the Jade Water Cave, he finally summoned the 3 stewards and gave them detailed instructions before preparing to go into seclusion to cultivate. Before going into seclusion, Qin Feng went to the spirit garden to check on the growth of the spirit herbs in the garden. At this moment, there were 9 types of spirit herbs in the garden. 8 of them were high-grade yellow-class spirit herbs. They were the 1,000-year profound Yin Ginseng, Jade Dragon Origin Yang Flower, Cloud Pattern Lingji Grass, 500-year Red Dragon Sealwort, 2-headed Fleeceflower Root, Yin Yang Lotus, and Dragon Gall Grass. There was also a high-grade yellow-class spirit herb that did not grow in the garden, but in the heavenly lake. It was the clear water golden lotus. The heavenly lake was filled with spiritual qi and was very suitable for the growth of this kind of spiritual medicine. There was also a high profound rank spirit wood, a 1,000-year profound water spirit peach wood. This was a peach tree that grew by the shore of the heavenly lake. The tree's crown towered into the sky, and the leaves were luxuriant. Large, juicy peaches could be seen between the leaves. This was a rare water attribute spirit peach tree. The fruit on the tree was also called the mysterious water spirit peach. This was a very expensive spirit fruit. This spirit peach was a kind of sacred healing item used to treat injuries. It could nourish one's life source and cleanse internal injuries. Moreover, it had an extremely miraculous effect, which was that it could purify Xiantian true qi. The ability to purify innate qi was extremely precious. One had to know that the purer the innate qi, the higher the chances of condensing a high-grade seed of heaven and earth. The mystical water spirit peach was one of the few rare spirit fruits that could purify and cleanse Xiantian true qi. The profound water spirit peach took 30 years to bloom, 30 years to bear fruit, and 30 years to mature. Each time, it would bear at most 9 fruit. Qin Feng had counted, and there were only 4 of them on the tree. In front of him, the first batch of spirit peaches had already matured. In a few days, the experts of the Medicine King Hall would come to pick them. On his shoulder, Ba Yi was extremely envious. The dummy in the sky had circled dozens of times. Qin Feng had to shout several times before he managed to control the 2 birds. Qin Feng knew that this spirit peach was beneficial to Silly Bird and Ba Yi, but he could not touch the spirit fruit. Even he, the cave master, could only look at it. Once it was touched, there would be great trouble. Coo-coo! Silly bird had her own ideas. Seeing that she could not eat it, she built a nest on the spirit peach. Silly bird looked dazed, but she was very smart. She knew that this spirit tree was the place with the most abundant ling energy outside of the blue water cave. Here, her cultivation speed would be much faster. Seeing an enormous white bird build a nest on the spirit tree, a martial practitioner quickly charged over and was about to chase it away. Qin Feng shouted for the medicine boy to stop. Seeing that it was the terrifying new cave master, the medicine boy jumped in fright. Hearing Qin Feng's shout, he did not dare to stay and hurriedly retreated. Ba Yi settled down on a withered ancient tree. This ancient tree was at the side of a stone mountain not far from the 1,000-year profound water spirit peach tree. This withered ancient tree was very tall and was grayish-brown in color. Its branches and leaves were withered and bare. It was filled with an aura of death and was extremely ominous. Qin Feng's eyes were sharp and could see that this was also a spirit peach tree. However, this spirit peach tree seemed to have its vitality taken away by another profound water spirit peach tree. The aura of death coiled around it, like the sun setting over the western mountains. Furthermore, this spirit peach tree grew on the land of extreme Een on the Scarlet Sky Peak and seemed to be undergoing a mutation. Qin Feng's powerful spiritual sense discovered that the Een Qi and the aura of death were all gathering towards this strange withered tree. Especially when Ba Yi landed on this ancient tree, this seemingly living yet not living, seemingly dead yet not dead ancient tree gathered the Een Qi and the speed of the aura of death increased by several times. The entire ancient tree was filled with a surge of evil aura and the aura of death. Yin and Yang, life and death. The Scarlet Sky Peak is originally a blessed land of water and wood attributes. Water and wood are the appearance of life. The land of extreme Een in such a blessed land must be the Een of Een. For this spirit peach tree to grow in such a place, it must be dead. Even if it doesn't die, there will be a heavenly lightning tribulation that will destroy the evil aura. However, if this spirit peach tree can survive the tribulation and fuse with the aura of life and death, I'm afraid its success will be much greater than that 1,000-year profound water spirit peach tree. Qin Feng's gaze swept across and revealed a trace of amazement in his eyes. After patrolling the spirit garden, Qin Feng returned to the Jade Water Cave and used the cave mansion's golden seal to open the cave mansion's restriction. The Jade Water Cave Mansion was vast. Other than the central hall, there were palaces and pavilions behind it. There was also a garden, a rockery, and various side halls. It was like an immortal's mansion. The secret room for seclusion was under the rockery. Qin Feng used the cave mansion's golden seal to open the mechanism. The secret room wasn't big, but it wasn't dark. As the stone door opened, specks of candlelight appeared. The room was clean and ventilated, with dust-repelling pearls embedded in the surroundings. Qin Feng's gaze landed on the center of the stone room. There were 2 praying mats here, with an incense table and a small cauldron in front. Qin Feng glanced around and sensed slightly. The spirit qi here was denser, more than 2 times denser than the spirit qi outside. Obviously, when this secret room was built, a spirit gathering formation like a Xian formation to gather spirit qi should have been built. Qin Feng sat cross-legged on the praying mat. The first thing Qin Feng prepared to cultivate was the art of cloud and rain. The art of cloud and rain was a high-tier spirit martial realm water attribute secret technique. There were a total of 12 levels. The art of cloud and rain was a secret technique that assisted the growth of the spirit herbs in the spirit garden. Cultivating the art of cloud and rain didn't have any destructive ability. However, cultivating this secret technique would produce a miraculous ability. It could use the power of the art of cloud and rain to resonate with spirit medicine. It could even control some of the water-type spirit qi in some plants, if one could cultivate to the 4th level. With this ability, the martial artist's 5 senses would further transform. It would gather the water-type spirit chi of heaven and earth and form a little spirit rain. If one could cultivate to the 6th level, they would be able to form spirit water dew that could nourish all things in the world. If one could cultivate to the 9th level, they would be able to form the one heavenly primordial water of the 36 types of acquired primordial waters. If one could cultivate to the completion of the 12th level, they would be able to turn the art of cloud and rain into a small superpower. As usual, the 2nd update will be tomorrow morning. The 3rd update will be tomorrow noon. Chapter 158. If he could master the 12th level, he could directly turn Little Art of Cloud and Rain into a martial way ability. Martial way ability, this was an ability that only a small number of Ningmai stage practitioners had. Qin Feng had already met numerous Ningmai stage practitioners and had even killed a few. But even though the majority of Ningmai stage practitioners had condensed true power, they did not have martial way ability. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to cultivate martial way ability. Sitting cross-legged on the prayer mat, Qin Feng used all his concentration to deduce the mysteries of Little Art of Cloud and Rain. From Qin Feng's point of view, the cultivation of Little Art of Cloud and Rain placed more emphasis on comprehension and understanding of the power of water. On this point, Qin Feng was blessed by the heavens. As a prodigy with exceptional water attribute talent, and with the bloodline of the northern water god Xuanwu, Qin Feng had exceptional comprehension towards water attribute martial arts. On the prayer mat, the youth had his eyes closed. Wisps of light blue mist appeared around his body. The wisps were like water vapor, following the youth's changing hand gestures. The seal that Qin Feng formed was the Little Art of Cloud and Rainus Little Art of Cloud and Rain. As long as this Little Art of Cloud and Rain was formed, the 1st level of Little Art of Cloud and Rain would be completed. Xiantian primordial qi surged in his body. Qin Feng sat cross-legged on the prayer mat, looking solemn. His 10 fingers joined together, rapidly changing hand gestures that dazzled the eyes. Following the changes of the hand gestures, a thick Xiantian qi gathered in the middle of his hand gestures. This was Qin Feng's first time cultivating Little Art of Cloud and Rain, and forming the Little Art of Cloud and Rain. But everything seemed familiar and smooth. The light blue mist followed the changes of the hand gestures like flowing water. Even the wisps of water Ling Qi in the air were drawn from all directions by Qin Feng, gathering in between his palms. Even though Qin Feng's eyes were closed, his 5 senses were all gathered in the center of his palms. The Xiantian qi above his palm seemed to have turned into a light blue ball of light. The center of the light blue ball of light was like a whirlpool, continuously devouring the Xiantian qi inside Qin Feng's body and the water spirit qi in the air. Qin Feng concentrated his 5 senses on his palm, not daring to be careless. Fortunately, Qin Feng's Xiantian zhen qi was extremely pure, without any impurities. Qin Feng's control over his own zhen qi was almost perfect, reaching 100% control. Qi. Under the observation of Qin Feng's 5 senses, the vortex in the center of his palm swallowed the Xiantian zhen qi, void yuan qi, and ling qi until it reached a certain level of saturation. Gradually, the vortex began to transform, and a faint blue light seal could be seen forming in the center of his palm. All right, now is the time. Seal of clouds and rain, condense. Qin Feng suddenly opened his eyes and urged the surging Xiantian true qi in his body into the seal of clouds and rain. In the next moment, the seal of clouds and rain in his palm suddenly shrank, releasing a faint blue light. The illusory seal instantly condensed, turning from illusory to solid. A light blue mark was suspended in the void. It's done. Looking at the light blue mark, Qin Feng's eyes revealed a trace of joy. The 1st level of the Little Art of Clouds and Rain could be considered a success at this stage. The next step was to fuse it with the Xiantian Qi. This step was extremely simple. Qin Feng controlled the seal of clouds and rain with his Xiantian Qi. In an instant, it turned into a ray of light and entered his Dantian. Circulating his Xiantian Qi, he almost completely refined the seal of clouds and rain in a breath's time, fusing it with his Xiantian Qi. Qin Feng opened his eyes and extended a hand. Following the activation of his Xiantian Qi, a seal of clouds and rain appeared in the center of his palm. With the appearance of this seal of clouds and rain, wisps of cold air suddenly appeared in the secret room. Qin Feng felt as if wisps of water vapor were gathering with the activation of the seal of clouds and rain. The wisps of water vapor gathered, forming a water droplet that appeared on Qin Feng's palm. The water droplet rotated above his palm. Qin Feng glanced at the water droplet. This was the sign of the first level of the little art of clouds and rain. Being able to control a little bit of water vapor. Qin Feng glanced at the small cauldron on the incense table. The incense in the small cauldron had only burned a third of the time. In less than half an hour, he had already mastered the first level of the little art of clouds and rain. This speed was truly unheard of. If he told others, it would be hard for them to believe. Even with Qin Feng's current state of mind, he could not help but feel surprised at himself. It was as if cultivating the little art of clouds and rain was like being assisted by the gods. The various obscure parts of the little art of clouds and rain could be easily understood with just a thought. Although this kind of understanding was partly due to his own power of understanding, it was more due to the Xiantian water attribute divine ability that Qin Feng mastered. Qin Feng discovered that mastering the Xiantian Qi, control of the sea, was a cheat-like aid in cultivating the little art of clouds and rain. The two complemented each other and came from the same source. When cultivating, one could often draw parallels and infer other things from one instance. Closing his eyes slightly, Qin Feng calmed his state of mind and once again immersed himself in cultivating the second level of the little art of clouds and rain. 10 hours later, a second light blue seal of clouds and rain appeared on Qin Feng's palm. The two light blue seals of clouds and rain gradually merged, forming a new seal of clouds and rain. This time, this seal of clouds and rain was even more real, as if it was a divine seal that controlled the clouds and rain of heaven and earth. This time, he used slightly more time, but the second level was naturally cultivated. 1 day later, Qin Feng mastered the third level of the little art of clouds and rain. The power of the little art of clouds and rain merged with the third seal of clouds and rain. 2 days later, Qin Feng mastered the fourth level of the little art of clouds and rain. Following the completion of the fourth level of the little art of clouds and rain, Qin Feng controlled the small piece of cloud to make it rain. But this cloud was limited, only enough to wet one person. Looking at the pitter-patter of rain falling from the dark cloud, Qin Feng shook his head. With a sweep of his sleeve, all the water vapor condensed into a ball and dissipated in the air. Smiling slightly, he closed his eyes again and began cultivating. 5 days later, Qin Feng mastered the fifth level of the little art of clouds and rain. When the little art of clouds and rain merged with the fifth seal of clouds and rain, its brilliance gradually turned from light blue to deep blue. Following the success of the fifth level, the cultivation of the little art of clouds and rain gradually became more obscure and the time required became longer and longer. Qin Feng needed more time to comprehend, control and condense. 10 days later, Qin Feng only managed to master the sixth level. At this time, the little art of clouds and rain merged with the sixth seal of clouds and rain completely turned deep blue. Within the little art of clouds and rain, there seemed to be a storm and thunder. The rainwater that was summoned once again had an additional trace of vitality. This was Khanate Dew. Khanate Dew nourished all living things and could even heal ordinary injuries. It was similar to a common healing elixir. However, the connate dew formed by the 6th level of the little art of clouds and rain, was not much. It was speckled like water vapor, faint like mist. When the little art of clouds and rain reached the 6th level, Qin Feng already felt a trace of a bottleneck. The cultivation of the 7th level was not as easy as the first 6 levels. 18 days. On the 18th day, Qin Feng only mastered the 7th level of the little art of clouds and rain. On the 29th day, Qin Feng mastered the 8th level of the little art of clouds and rain. The little art of clouds and rain merged with the 8th seal of clouds and rain. The little art of clouds and rain, condensed from the 8th level of the little art of clouds and rain, carried a faint black light. When he reached the 8th level of the little art of clouds and rain, Qin Feng found that it was abnormally difficult to condense the little art of clouds and rain again. Third update at noon. Chapter 159. After an unknown period of time in the secret chamber, a wave of water attribute spirit qi gathered around Qin Feng. A formless spirit qi was about to be born in his palm. Bang! Suddenly, Qin Feng's body shook and his qi became chaotic. The spirit qi that had gathered around him instantly dissipated. The faint black seal of clouds and rain that was about to condense in his palm shattered like flowing light and dissipated into thin air. It still doesn't work. Qin Feng opened his eyes. A faint blue light flashed in his dark pupils. This was Qin Feng's 9th seal of clouds and rain after thousands of attempts. However, just like before, he still failed. Qin Feng's eyes were filled with helplessness. The difficulty of cultivating the 9th level of little art of clouds and rain was beyond his imagination. Every time he was about to succeed in condensing the seal of clouds and rain, he would always be lacking that last bit of opportunity. However, in this month, Qin Feng did not just sit there and do nothing. Even though the little art of cloud and rain had not reached the 9th level, but the primordial chaotic unity qi was on the verge of breaking through to the late stage of the 8th level of the martial way. After thinking for a moment, Qin Feng decided to temporarily delay the cultivation of little art of clouds and rain and put his focus on gung metal killing art. Little art of clouds and rain and the gung metal killing art were the most basic and also the most important martial secret arts in the herb garden. They were also the focus of this test. Qin Feng's talent in the way of the sword was not weak. Especially when he entered the connate stage, he used a wisp of the connate title annihilation sword will as his main force. On the 55th day, Qi. In the secret chamber, the black-robed youth sitting on the cattail pond opened his eyes. A pure faint blue light flashed in his eyes, as if it could cut through the dark void. Deep in his hand, strands of hair-sized connate invisible sword qi swam in his palm like a school of fish in water. Qin Feng's mind moved and the numerous strands of connate invisible sword qi gathered in his hand to form a faint blue connate invisible sword. This faint blue connate invisible sword was the size of a chopstick. The faint blue connate invisible sword qi seemed to be solid, flowing with the luster of the ocean. Gungjin sword qi! Qin Feng shouted, and a trace of fierceness flashed in his eyes. He casually pointed his finger, and the light blue sword light broke through the air, as fast as lightning. In an instant it blasted into the stone wall of the secret room, and directly pierced through several inches. The Jade Water Cave's seclusion chamber was made of obsidian. Even if a martial artist of the 9th heavenly layer attacked with all his strength, he would only be able to leave a white mark on the obsidian stone. Qin Feng was able to pierce through several inches with just one sword qi, which showed how sharp his sword light was. If Qin Feng's innate title annihilation sword qi was an overbearing victory, then the Gung Jin slaughtering sword qi was superior in terms of fine control. What a pity! My 6th level of golden gung killing sword aura is still not enough. Looking at the chopstick-sized hole in the stone wall, Qin Feng shook his head. The real Deshang's golden gung killing sword chi would not have such a big hole. Instead, it would be as thin as a cow's hair. Moreover, the color of the sword chi was not right. It should be invisible and colorless. Even though Qin Feng's innate invisible sword chi was as thin as a strand of hair, but it was still not perfect. He felt slightly regretful, but Qin Feng quickly became spirited. In a short 55 days, Qin Feng had reached the 8th level of Little Art of Cloud and Rain, and the 6th level of Gung Jin Slaughtering Art. Even if he was not at the top, he should be in the strongest batch. Actually, Qin Feng was too modest. If Qin Feng's cultivation speed was publicized, it would scare many people to death. Among this batch of new students, there were more than a few hundred disciples who chose to enter the herb garden. But right now, the strongest person was only at the 6th level of the Little Art of Cloud and Rain, and the Gung Metal Killing Art, at the 5th level. But that person's background was very special, and he had many inhuman reasons to be able to have such speed. But this cultivation speed had already attracted the attention of many strong practitioners in the medicine garden. Qin Feng calmed down and calmed his mind. His gaze landed on the 7th level of the Golden Gung Sword Art. This Gung Jin Slaughtering Sword Chi is very easy to cultivate. Even though it is in a different direction from 13 Swords of Daluo Godhood, it can be learned by analogy. I should be able to reach the 9th level in 3 months. If I am given a year, reaching the 12th level will not be a problem. Qin Feng thought to himself, but his expression was calm. Back then, Qin Feng had created 13 Swords of Daluo Godhood. Even though he had never actually cultivated it, his accumulation of swordsmanship was not inferior to those magnates who specialized in swordsmanship. Now that he was cultivating Gung Jin Slaughtering Sword Art, he was like a fish in water. With a calm gaze, Qin Feng closed his eyes and prepared to practice the Gung Jin Slaughtering Sword Chi again with his innate sword chi. Ding ding ding! Suddenly, the bell on the stone wall rang. The series of ringing made Qin Feng frown as he thought to himself, "What is going on outside? Someone is ringing the cave's golden bell." Before Qin Feng went into seclusion, he had instructed the 3 stewards not to disturb him if there was nothing important. Troublesome! Qin Feng walked out of seclusion with a trace of anger in his heart. Rumble! The cave that had been sealed for 2 months opened. In front of the Jade Water Cave, the 3 stewards were already pacing around anxiously. "Brother Luan, when do you think the cave master will come out of seclusion? What should we do now?" Luan Xiaochuan glanced at Zhao Yuan with a frown and said in a deep voice, "All right, Zhao Yuan, stop pacing around in front of me. There is no use in being anxious. The cave master will find a way." With a light snort, Su Jie asked with an ugly expression as he looked at the bitter Zhao Yuan. "Old Zhao, what happened to you? How did the cloud-pattern Ganoderma grass in the spirit garden wither overnight?" Before Lord Cave Master went into seclusion, he had clearly said that the 7 types of spirit herbs in this spirit garden are related to the future of the 3 of us. If something were to happen to these spirit herbs, not only would Lord Cave Master be implicated, we would also be unable to bear the consequences. Did someone do something to the herb garden? Luan Xiaochuan's face was gloomy and his gaze was as sharp as a sword. In the next moment, Su Jie shook his head. "Impossible, the outer disciples guarding the spirit garden are all on our side. They can't do anything. Then could it be Jingbing and those guys with ulterior motives?" Luan Xiaochuan gnashed his teeth in hatred at the mention of Jingbing. Of the 4 high-level alchemists, only Jingbing was not on the same side as them. Su Jie denied. "No, Jingbing's group has been suppressed by the 3 of us for the past 2 months. They can't even protect themselves and have no chance." Su Jie looked at Zhao Yuan, who had his head lowered, and asked, "Old Zhao, your little art of cloud and rain has reached the 5th level and is only 1 step away from being able to condense the spirit water dew. Don't tell me you have no way to reverse the withering of the cloud-pattern Ganoderma grass? Smiling bitterly, Zhao Yuan said bitterly. No, unless I can break through to the 6th level of Little Art of Cloud and Rain, and condense the spirit water dew, I might be able to awaken the life of the spirit herb. But you know, the first 3 levels of Little Art of Cloud and Rain are easy, but the last 9 levels are harder with each level. I've only just broken through to the 5th level of Little Art of Cloud and Rain. The 6th level is still far away. Luan Xiaochuan and Su Jie exchanged glances, feeling the same way. This Little Art of Cloud and Rain is easy at first, the 5th and 6th levels are a threshold. Looks like this time we can only ask the cave master to make a trip to the Sweet Dew Hall and invite a Sweet Dew Hall disciple to save the spirit herb or buy a portion of Sweet Dew spirit water. But no matter which Sweet Dew Hall disciple to act or buy a portion of Sweet Dew spirit water, the price will not be low. There's one more update after midnight, please recommend it, please add it to your collection to increase the speed of explosion. Chapter 160. Rumble, 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 rumble. The door opened and a black-robed man walked out. Seeing this scene, Luan Xiaochuan and the others who were talking looked up, overjoyed. Greetings, Cave Master. Glancing at the three, Qin Feng's eyes fell on Luan Xiaochuan. After 2 months, Luan Xiaochuan had broken through to the meridian stage. But looking at the aura on his body, it was incomplete. It was obvious that he had not condensed a high-grade heaven and earth seed and had not cultivated any martial arts. Qin Feng felt that he was even weaker than the 3 outer sect disciples he had killed. Cave Master. Qin Feng looked over and Luan Xiaochuan's expression changed. He felt a huge pressure appear in his heart, as if it was the gaze of an ancient beast. It's so strong. Luan Xiaochuan's expression changed, and he quickly lowered his head. He originally thought that after breaking through to the meridian stage, he would at least have the ability to protect himself, even if he was not on the same level as Qin Feng. But now, he felt that his original guess was wrong. Under that gaze, Luan Xiaochuan was like an ant under the foot of a giant beast. What happened? Why did you have to ring the cave's golden bell to call me out? Qin Feng withdrew his gaze. In the 2 months of cultivation, although he did not deliberately swallow pills to cultivate, he had already broken through from the middle stage of the 8th firmament to the late stage of the 8th firmament. Plop! Zhao Yuan knelt on the ground. Cave Master, this subordinate deserves to die 10,000 deaths for failing the Cave Master's trust. Cave Master, please punish me. Zhao Yuan, wasn't he the manager of the Spirit Garden? Did something happen to the spirit herbs in the Spirit Garden? Frowning, Qin Feng looked at Zhao Yuan and said coldly. Get to the point. What happened? Did something happen to the spirit herbs in the Spirit Garden? Cave Master. Zhao Yuan's face was red and his lips were trembling. The dull youth could not say a word for a long time. Qin Feng's face was gloomy. He kicked Zhao Yuan and walked quickly towards the Spirit Garden. On the ground, blood trickled down from the corner of Zhao Yuan's mouth. He hurriedly wiped it off and scrambled to his feet. The spiritual garden was just a few hundred steps away from the blue water cavern. The spiritual garden was surrounded by green grasses, which were not ordinary grasses, but precious herbs. There were ginseng, 7-leaf elemental grass, bone-cleansing grass, detoxifying purple night 3-ring grass, and so on. There was also a kind of purple bamboo growing on the side. This was a type of half-spirit wood. Generally speaking, spiritual wood was more valuable than spiritual grasses of the same level. Every stalk of medicinal herb and every stalk of exotic flower here was extremely rare in the outside world. It could be said that they were abnormally precious. Qin Feng was not in the mood to check and went straight to the Spirit Garden. Honorable Cave Master. Several low-level apprentice alchemists, who were testing the water for the medicinal herbs and removing insects, hurriedly lowered their heads when they saw the black-robed youth arrive. The spirit garden was surrounded by a fence, and several spirit herbs that emitted a faint light appeared in front of Qin Feng. In the center of the spirit garden, there was a 1,000-year-old profound yin ginseng with a small purple flower that looked like a baby. On a withered tree stump, there was a scarlet-red flower with 7 orange flowers growing out of the vitality of the tree stump. It was the jade dragon primordial sunflower. Next to it was a black and red yin-yang lotus the size of a washbasin, a dragon gallgrass that would automatically expand like a snake's gallbladder, a 2-headed Chinese knotweed, and a red dragon sealwort. Each of the spiritual grasses was shining brightly. Qin Feng saw a sickly Ganoderma on another withered tree stump. This was a Ganoderma that looked like white jade. The strange thing was that this Ganoderma had 9 fat leaves. This was a cloud-pattern Ganoderma with 9 leaves. It was obviously 900 years old and was only 100 years away from becoming a 1,000-year-old spiritual herb. With the characteristics of the cloud-pattern Ganoderma, once it was 1,000 years old, it would definitely become a profound spiritual herb. However, this cloud-pattern Ganoderma grass's 9 white jade leaves had some brown spots on them. These were the brown spots formed when the evil qi entered the body. This was a sign that it was about to wither. If this cloud-pattern Ganoderma withered, according to the rules, Qin Feng would be deducted 1 merit point. Qin Feng did not have a single merit point. According to the rules, he would definitely be demoted to a 4th-class outer disciple. Even the Jade Water Cave would be taken back. What's the matter with this cloud-pattern Ganoderma? With a gloomy gaze, Qin Feng looked at Zhao Yuan who had just arrived. Zhao Yuan smiled bitterly and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He pursed his lips and said, "Cave Master, this subordinate is also confused. This subordinate knows that this spiritual garden is the most important place in our Scarlet Sky Peak. Therefore, I have assigned people to guard it day and night, not daring to slack off in the slightest. However, I really do not understand why so many brown spots appeared on this cloud-pattern Ganoderma in one night." Zhao Yuan glanced at Qin Feng and said in a low voice, "However, in this subordinate's opinion, the brown spots on this cloud-pattern Ganoderma must be caused by the evil qi. This is not incurable. As long as it is bathed in spirit water dew, it will definitely be able to dispel the evil qi and recover its vitality." What Zhao Yuan said coincided with the judgment in Qin Feng's heart. Just based on this eyesight, Zhao Yuan was not an incompetent person. Nodding inwardly, the anger in his heart dissipated slightly. Looking at Zhao Yuan, Qin Feng said, "If that's the case, why don't you use spirit water dew? Cave Master, it's not that this subordinate is unwilling, but that we can't." "You can't." Qin Feng stared at Zhao Yuan and the other two. These 3 people could be considered as the few high-level medicine apprentices in Scarlet Sky Peak. They had even reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain. Luan Xiaochuan was quick-witted and understood the meaning in Qin Feng's eyes. He could not help but laugh bitterly and went forward to say, "Lord Cave Master, you may not know that although all of us Medicine Garden disciples know the minor art of cloud and rain, it is easy to learn but hard to master. The first 3 levels of this secret technique are extremely easy to cultivate, but the later levels are indeed increasingly difficult. Ordinary Medicine Garden disciples would not be able to break through to the 4th level without 2 to 3 years. Zhao Yuan is the most talented person among us. However, with Lord Zhao's talent, he only managed to break through to the 5th level of the minor art of cloud and rain after 5 years of hard work. If you want to reach the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain, you will need comprehension and opportunity. Among the various peaks in our medicine garden, those who have reached the first 5 levels of the minor art of cloud and rain can be found everywhere. However, Those who can reach the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain can be counted on one hand. Is the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain so difficult to cultivate? Qin Feng was a little surprised. When he cultivated to the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain, other than feeling that he used a little more time, breaking through was not difficult. It's not just difficult. Many medicine apprentices are stuck at the 5th level their entire lives. Luan Xiaochuan and the other two smiled bitterly. The three of us have no other choice but to ask Lord Cave Master to come out of seclusion. Lord Cave Master only needs to make a trip to the 10,000 Du Hall and invite a 7th level disciple, or exchange for some spirit water dew. This cloud pattern Lingji grass should still be able to be saved. The Sweet Dew Hall was a part of the Medicine King Hall. The people who worked there were all Medicine Garden disciples who had reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain. So that's how it is. However, this matter does not need to be so troublesome. Leave the matter of the spirit water dew to me. A smile appeared on Qin Feng's face. Cave Master, you. The three were greatly shaken. Luan Xiaochuan suppressed the shock in his heart and asked carefully. Cave Master, you mean that you can use the spirit water dew? You have reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain? That's right. I have indeed reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain. Qin Feng nodded. He had not only reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain, he had reached the 8th level in one go. Even if it was like before, the three stared with wide eyes, their eyes filled with disbelief. Before Qin Feng went into seclusion, he had said that he would go into seclusion to cultivate the minor art of cloud and rain and the gung metal killing art. But it had only been less than 2 months. He had reached the 6th level of the minor art of cloud and rain in 2 months? The three's minds were ringing, as if they were in a dream. As usual, the second watch will still be at 8 in the morning, the third watch will be at noon. Chapter 161. Their minds rumbled as the three of them were shocked. To reach the 6th level of the little art of cloud and rain in 2 months, this cultivation speed was terrifying. This was monstrous. This was the talent of the heads of the various institutes? No wonder the heads of the various institutes were so popular. To be able to suppress a peak and become a cave master at such a young age. The three of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at Qin Feng's eyes, other than the original reverence and fear, there was an additional trace of respect from the bottom of their hearts. Qin Feng's figure flashed and stepped into the spirit garden, landing a few steps away from the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass. A faint medicinal fragrance wafted over. Inhaling slightly, his Xiantian true qi increased slightly. Qin Feng's mind moved and he extended a palm. Xiantian true qi surged and a seal of cloud and rain emitting a faint black luster floated above his right palm. A faint black seal of cloud and rain? Luan Xiaochuan, Su Jie and Zhao Yuan stared unblinkingly at the seal of cloud and rain floating above Qin Feng's palm. The three of them had never seen a seal of cloud and rain emitting a faint black color. Normally, the first level of the seal of cloud and rain was a faint blue color. The 4th level of the seal of cloud and rain was blue. The 6th level of the seal of cloud and rain was dark blue. But they had never seen a faint black seal of cloud and rain. Strands of rain gathered in the air. Dark clouds covered the sky and the spirit energy in the air fluctuated abnormally. A layer of dark blue rain fell from the sky. Bit by bit, it emitted an abnormal spirit energy fluctuation. Spirit water dew. Drops of spiritual water that contained the power of creation and vitality dripped onto the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass. On the leaves that were covered with brown spots, the brown spots gradually faded. The cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass, slender umbrella like white jade, transformed into vitality. The dense medicinal fragrance curled up like smoke and the brown spots gradually faded, returning to its milky white color. It's done. Luan Xiaochuan and the other two were overjoyed. Qin Feng nodded and the dark clouds above the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass's head instantly dispersed. In just a few breaths, Qin Feng had already used up a tenth of the Xiantian origin qi in his body. Not good. Cave Master, look! Suddenly, Luan Xiaochuan pointed at the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass and shouted. Qin Feng stared at the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass and saw that the brown spots on it had started to grow again. Qin Feng's five senses were extremely strong. Through the energy resonance of little art of cloud and rain, Qin Feng seemed to see through the cloud-patterned Lingji grass. This feeling was extremely strange. It was as if the moisture in the air or the moisture in the spirit herb had become Qin Feng's eyes. In an instant, countless information appeared in his mind. Qin Feng's eyes saw the direction of the air flow and the sound of the grass breaking through the soil. At the same time, he saw the grayish-brown nematode inside the cloud-patterned Ganoderma. This was a spirit insect. It was grayish-brown in color and looked like a miniature caterpillar. It had fine fangs and looked extremely ferocious in Qin Feng's eyes. This is the invasion of an inner demon. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. At this moment, this nematode was occupying the edge of the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass umbrella. It was greedily devouring the life force of the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass. Even the sweet dew that he dropped was mostly devoured by this abominable nematode. It was because of this grayish-brown nematode that the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass was withering day by day. Perhaps it felt the threat of Qin Feng's mental energy. This nematode's slender body first tensed up and then crazily tried to burrow under the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass umbrella. It wanted to burrow through the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass and escape underground. Die! Qin Feng's eyes flashed coldly. A light blue innate invisible sword qi that was as fine as a strand of hair appeared. Under the shocked gazes of Luan Xiaochuan and the other two, it instantly blasted into the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass. Poochie! A toothpick-sized hole suddenly appeared on the cloud-patterned Ganoderma grass jade-white leaf. A light blue sword qi wrapped around a grayish worm and pierced through the leaf to appear in front of everyone. Innate gung metal sword qi! This is... Two exclamations sounded almost at the same time. Luan Xiaochuan was paying attention to the sword qi that was swimming around in Qin Feng's hand like a lote. Zhao Lianyao was staring at the grayish-brown nematode that was wrapped in sword qi. Qin Feng wrapped the nematode with sword qi. What was surprising was that the nematode was not killed by Qin Feng's sword qi that could cut through any divine weapon. Instead, it was fiercely charging at the sword qi, trying to escape. What a ferocious and fierce little worm! Qin Feng was shocked. Qin Feng's eyes flashed coldly. Qin Feng pointed with both his hands and a beam of innate, invisible sword qi that could cut through the void landed on the nematode. However, something happened that shocked him. This invincible sword qi could not kill the worm. The worm was alive and kicking, rolling its body in the air. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, emitting a ferocious and evil aura. Qin Feng tried to wrap it in water vapor and crush it with water pressure, but it was useless against the nematode. Qin Feng's face was extremely dark. Cave Master. Qin Feng glanced at Zhao Yuan, who wanted to say something but stopped. His expression changed and he shouted coldly. If you have something to say, say it, Zhao Yuan said. Cave Master, this is a golden nematode. You know the origin of this little worm. Qin Feng frowned. Zhao Yuan lowered his head and looked at the ferocious little worm with some fear. This subordinate once saw a vague introduction of this little worm in an ancient book. This is a rare and strange worm. It is said to be the descendant of the 6 great ancient nematodes. It absorbs and devours things that contain essence qi. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with shock. 6 great ancient nematodes: sun-devouring acripoid, great venomous centipede, emperor glass butterfly, golden nematode king worm. Qin Feng's face turned gloomy. Each of the 6 ancient ferocious insects was as powerful as an innate true spirit once they reached adulthood. This golden thread chong is the descendant of the golden thread kingworm. Cave Master, look at it. Although its entire body is grayish-brown, there is a faint golden streak on its back. This is the symbol of the golden thread kingworm. Zhao Yuan's expression was solemn. No, I've also heard of the 6 great ancient vicious insects. These 6 vicious insects are terrifying creatures that can devour demon gods. This vicious insect looks terrifying, but it's nothing more than that. Su Jie sized it up with a doubtful gaze. This is the larva of a golden thread kingworm. It should have just been born. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come to our spiritual garden to steal spiritual herbs. Zhao Yuan's eyes flashed with envy. The larva of the golden thread kingworm was a true divine creature. The value of such a larva was immeasurable. An adult golden thread kingworm could devour anything, comparable to an innate true spirit. Although this larva might only possess a sliver of the golden thread kingworm's bloodline, its value might not be as great as that of a true golden thread kingworm. However, if it was captured and nurtured properly, it would definitely not evolve into a true golden thread kingworm in the future. On the spot, Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. At this moment, the sound of wings flapping could be heard. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sound of wings flapping could be heard as a strange fleshy bird flapped its wings and flew over. The flight of birds was usually pleasing to the eye. However, this strange bird was in a sorry state. Little 8 used a lot of effort to reach the black-robed youth's shoulder. Luckily, it didn't fall off. Gugu, Brother Feng, you're out. Gugu, Brother Feng is so considerate. He actually prepared breakfast for me. A black shadow flashed. In the next moment, under everyone's stunned gazes, the golden thread kingworm was swallowed by a strange bird that came out of nowhere. This is the second update. Chapter 162. Lord Ba's performance was unimaginable. He actually swallowed the golden nematode in one gulp. The golden nematode was the descendant of the 6 vicious. The golden nematode could swallow anything. Even if it entered the stomach of a true dragon, it could still devour the true dragon. This silly bird swallowed such a vicious creature. Not only was it unaffected, it was as if it had been starving for a long time and finally had a full meal. Little Ba, you didn't feel any discomfort after swallowing the golden nematode? Qin Feng looked at this strange fleshy bird with a strange expression. Croak, croak, delicious. Why would I feel any discomfort? After swallowing the golden nematode in one gulp, Lord Ba flew back to Qin Feng's shoulder. Delicious. Zhao Yuan's eyeballs almost fell out of their socket. This strange bird actually said that the descendant of the 6 vicious was delicious. What was the origin of this strange bird? Glancing at the shocked trio, Qin Feng retracted his gaze and walked in front of them. All right, the matter of the golden nematode has been settled. I hope that you guys will swallow everything that happened here today. If I find out that someone outside said anything, you guys know the consequences. Qin Feng turned around and stared at the trio. His tone carried a trace of coldness. Lord Ba's abnormality must not be exposed. Yes, Cave Master. The trio immediately nodded as if they were awakened from a dream. Too many things had happened today. Regardless of whether it was Qin Feng's attainments in the minor art of cloud and rain, the appearance of the descendant of the 6 vicious, or this strange bird that could swallow the descendant of the 6 vicious. If any of these things were to be revealed, it would probably cause a storm. However, today's events had strengthened the trio's belief that they must hold onto the thigh of this new cave master. To be able to reach the 6th level of the little art of cloud and rain in less than 2 months' time, and to be able to explode out of the gung metal killing art, in a flash, this cave master's future was limitless. The possibility of him firmly sitting on the Azure Dragon's first seat was extremely high. After settling the matter in the spirit garden, Qin Feng did not go into seclusion again. The path of cultivation was one of relaxation and tension. Going into seclusion blindly was not a good thing. From this day onwards, he would spend a small portion of his time managing Scarlet Sky Peak, and most of his time under the profound water spirit Peach Wood to meditate and adjust his state of mind. Every day, Qin Feng would sit cross-legged beside the heavenly lake. In the morning, he would breathe in the innate purple qi, and during the day, he would watch the tides of the heavenly lake rise and fall. He would listen to the sound of the wind and rain, and use the nature of nature to refine his innate qi. At night, he would absorb the lunar essence of the moon and draw the power of the moon to refine his spirit. He swallowed a jade spirit pill every day. 1 jade spirit pill was equivalent to 10 upper-grade essence-quenching pills. This was a rare elixir. Among the ingredients used, there were several profound class elixirs. Its value was astonishing, and it had unimaginable benefits for martial artists in the 9th heaven of the martial path. Not only could it consolidate one's foundation, but it could also increase one's power. Swallowing a spirit pill was equivalent to 3 months of bitter cultivation. Only All Stars College, which was in charge of the 100,000 Herb Mountains herb garden, would be so generous as to give it to a level 5 inner sect disciple as a monthly salary. Even so, every 5th level inner disciple could only receive 1 pill per month. The effect of this jade spirit pill was indeed tyrannical. After swallowing a jade spirit pill, Qin Feng's innate transmutation unity qi directly advanced to 15 waves. 15 waves of innate qi. This terrifying innate qi was definitely not inferior to ordinary martial artists who cultivated to the 10th heaven of the Martial Path Foundation establishment realm. If it wasn't for Qin Feng desperately condensing his innate qi to stabilize his foundation and suppressing his breakthrough, he would have already broken through to the 9th heaven of the martial path. Under the mystic water spirit Peach Wood, Qin Feng, who was meditating cross-legged, felt the surging innate transmutation unity qi in his body. He almost couldn't help but let out a long roar. Pung pung! The invisible qi around his body exploded, causing the void to tremble. After reaching the peak of the 8th heaven of the martial path, Qin Feng had already touched the threshold of the 9th heaven of the martial path. The 9th heaven of the martial path was the deity transformation realm. When ordinary martial artists reached this realm, they would unlock their spiritual divine treasure and comprehend the 6th sense of inspiration. The 6th sense of inspiration was the mental power. Qin Feng's innate mental power was strong. For him, this was something he had already broken through. Qin Feng forcefully suppressed the surging innate transmutation unity qi in his body, slowly refining it. Once his qi reached the peak, Qin Feng would truly break through to the 9th heaven of the martial path. With a flip of his hand, the remaining 2 white jade bottles appeared in his palm. Fiddling with the 2 jade bottles, Qin Feng saw that each bottle contained a jade spirit pill. Qin Feng had already swallowed 1 pill. If he wanted to swallow the second one, he would have to wait at least half a month. If he continuously swallowed them, not only would it be a waste of medicinal efficacy, it would also cause his foundation to become unstable. Looking at the 2 bottles of jade spirit pills in his hand, Qin Feng's eyes darkened. The innate transmutation unity qi is indeed worthy of being called the number 1 qi. However, it consumes too many spirit herbs and spirit pills. If it was an ordinary 9th heaven of the martial path, a single jade spirit pill would not only allow one to break through to the 9th heaven of the martial path, but it could even push one to the mid-9th heaven of the martial path. However, I haven't even broken through a small realm. However, the effects of this jade spirit pill are indeed extraordinary. If I can get a few more bottles of these spirit pills, breaking through to the 13th heaven of the martial path will be just around the corner. Thinking of the innate transmutation unity qi, Qin Feng bitterly smiled. This cultivation method was indeed worthy of being called the number 1 qi foundation in the myriad heavens. It was just that it was too difficult to cultivate. Sighing softly, Qin Feng looked in the direction of All Stars College. However, there will always be a way. Right now, I need to think of a way to get more points. All Stars College had a contribution hall that provided all kinds of spirit pills and spirit herbs. As long as one had a few points, there were no spirit pills or spirit herbs that couldn't be exchanged. This was a shortcut. It was also the only way that Qin Feng could think of to increase his speed. Actually, there was still a way. On the Scarlet Sky Peak, other than the 9 stalks of spirit herbs and spirit roots in the herb garden, there were also half-spirit trees in other places. These half-spirit trees were originally 10,000 years old ancient trees. However, as they grew on the Scarlet Sky Peak, which was filled with spirit chi, they gradually turned into half-spirit trees. Most of these half-spirit trees bore spirit fruit. These spirit fruits contained spirit chi and were extremely precious. If Qin Feng were to consume more spirit fruits, they would have some effect on his cultivation. Although the effect was limited, it was still better than nothing. Of course, the spirit fruits from these half-spirit trees couldn't be compared to the spirit fruits from real spirit trees. There was only one spirit tree in the Scarlet Sky Peak, which was the mystic water spirit peach wood. However, Qin Feng didn't have any ideas about this spirit tree. When Qin Feng entered All Stars College, he heard that a disciple of the herb garden had an accident because of the spirit herbs in the herb garden. In order to repay the spirit herbs, the disciple worked as a slave labor in the herb garden for dozens of years. Qin Feng thought of all kinds of ways to earn points. There were many ways to earn points. He could go to All Stars College's Demon Hunter Hall to receive missions. Countless missions were issued in the Demon Hunter Hall every day. As long as one was willing to work hard, there would always be a suitable mission. However, Qin Feng rejected this option. Now that Qin Feng was in charge of the Scarlet Sky Peak's Jade Water Cave, he couldn't leave his post without permission. Thinking of the Demon Hunter Hall, Qin Feng couldn't help but recall the privilege he had as the Azure Dragon's chief. According to the Academy's rules, as the chief, Qin Feng had the right to know about the upcoming missions issued by the Demon Hunter Hall in advance. Looking at the clear ripples on the surface of the lake, Qin Feng suddenly thought of an idea and a smile appeared on his face. The first bucket of gold for entering All Stars College is here. 5 days later. On this day, when Qin Feng was busy plucking lotus roots from the heavenly lake, Luan Xiaochuan hurriedly walked to the lakeside and shouted, "Cave Master, a disciple of the herb garden who claims to be your old friend requests an audience. As usual, there's another update after midnight." Chapter 163. Senior Sister Bai Yun, it's you? At the foot of the Scarlet Sky Peak, Qin Feng was surprised to see a beautiful girl in a palace robe that resembled a white cloud. Obviously, this old friend was Senior Sister Bai Yun, who had taken care of him when he was a new student. At this moment, there were a few other girls in palace robes behind Senior Sister Bai Yun. Their gazes all landed on the black-robed youth. This is the first seat of the Azure Dragon Institute? He doesn't seem to be anything special? The girls flew over as if they were riding on the wind. Each of them exuded an aura that could shake the air. Obviously, these girls were all experts of the Meridian stage. The girls were chatting and laughing. Although they were experts of the Meridian stage, they didn't seem to be high and mighty. For some reason, Qin Feng felt that they were a bit strange. It should be because of Senior Sister Bai Yun, right? Qin Feng felt strange. Qin Feng's gaze swept across the crowd and finally landed on Bai Yun. "What, junior brother Qin Feng, you seem to be very surprised." Bai Yun's beautiful face smiled sweetly. Her eyes were bright and moving. Actually, she was surprised. After not seeing junior brother Qin Feng for a few days, his cultivation had become more profound. His every movement was surrounded by a hazy aura. Obviously, he had practiced the art of cloud and rain to an extremely high level. A strange light flashed in her eyes. Bai Yun smiled lightly and pointed at the three girls. Junior brother Qin Feng, let me introduce you. These are all senior sister's good friends. Qin Feng looked over. Bai Yun's bright eyes moved as she pointed at the first girl in green on her left. This is Lu Yi. She was dressed in a light green flowery palace dress. The girl in green had a delicate and pretty appearance. Her black jade-like hair was tied up in a beautiful bun. A few plump and round pearls decorated her hair, making her cloud-like hair look even more soft and glossy. Her beautiful eyes overflowed with splendor as her red lips rippled with a faint smile. The girl's elegant temperament was like a gentle breeze. What a pretty girl! A trace of admiration flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. This is Yunemo. Yunemo is a talented girl among us. She can sing, dance, play the zither, and play the flute. She's good at everything. Bai Yun pointed at the second girl and smiled. This was a young girl in a black dress. She was holding a black jade-like jade flute. Her elegant jade face was painted with a light plum blossom makeup. Her originally clear and beautiful face had faded away, revealing a trace of charm that could captivate one's soul. The girl in the black dress smiled sweetly at Qin Feng. She was charming, and flirtatious. And her, Wang Qingyu. Bai Yun pointed at the last girl, who was also dressed in white. Qin Feng's gaze fell on the white-clothed girl. Her shoulders were sharp, her waist was plain, her eyebrows were like jade feathers, and her skin was as white as snow. She was also a peerless beauty. Seeing Qin Feng's gaze fall on Wang Qingyu, White Cloud's eyes revealed a trace of anger. Junior brother, aren't you going to invite senior sister to your cave residence? Not at all. Senior sister, please. Qin Feng came back to his senses and laughed in spite of himself. He quickly stepped aside to open up a path. Scarlet Sky Peak was located at the northwest border of All Stars College's territory. Usually, there were very few disciples who came to visit. Usually, all the medicine boys on Scarlet Sky Peak were men. At this moment, a few young girls walked up and immediately became more attractive. Many apprentice alchemists stealthily glanced over, and their gazes landed on the graceful and enchanting young women. These young girls were all beauties of their time. Each of them had fair skin, graceful figures, and gentle eyes that could move one's heart. Some medicine boys stood at a distance and watched with anticipation in their eyes. Unfortunately, this young girl's gaze fell on the black-robed young man, causing the medicine boys to feel disappointed. All of them were martial way experts. To these martial way experts, the towering Scarlet Sky Peak was like flat ground. As they chatted along the way, Qin Feng beat around the bush and roughly understood senior sister Bai Yun's mission. It turned out that senior sister Bai Yun was from Spirit Origin Palace Hall. All Stars College had a clear division of labor. The 100,000 Herbs Mountain disciples were responsible for cultivating low-value herbs on a large scale, while the Medicine Garden disciples were responsible for some of the more precious spirit herbs. Spirit Origin Palace disciples were responsible for picking and classifying spirit herbs and spirit herb. Bai Yun and the others had a clear goal, to pick the black water spirit herbs that were about to mature. Not long after, they arrived at Heavenly Lake. Bai Yun's eyes flashed with envy as she swept a glance over the lake and mountains. Junior brother Qin Feng, your place is really carefree. Green mountains, clear water, and dense spirit energy. Scarlet Sky Peak is worthy of being a 7th-grade spirit mountain. To be able to set up a cave residence in such a high-grade spirit mountain paradise, this kind of fortune is really enviable. Senior sister, you flatter me. It's the Spirit Origin Palace that makes people envious. As everyone knows, the Spirit Origin Palace is famous for being a paradise. Every day you come in contact with rare flowers, rare herbs, and rare fruit. That place is so rich that it overflows with oil. How can my poor and remote place compare to it? Bai Yun and the other girls rolled their eyes at Qin Feng. The Scarlet Sky Peak was filled with an endless stream of exotic flowers and herbs. Many of them were precious herbs, and any one of them was priceless. Not to mention the spirit herbs in the spirit garden. Although the Spirit Origin Palace disciples came in contact with all kinds of spirit flowers and spirit fruits, these things had to be reported. They could only look at them and not take them. Unlike Qin Feng, who was the landlord of a mountain and cave, although the exotic flowers and rare herbs in this mountain belonged to All Stars College, if a cave master like Qin Feng wanted to, they would definitely be overflowing with wealth. Behind Bai Yun, the girls looked at Qin Feng with a strange expression. In All Stars College, those who owned a spirit mountain paradise at this age were all eligible bachelors. Single. Accumulated points. Owned an abode. An innate talent. This was an excellent fiancé. If she could trap this black-robed youngster under her skirt, wouldn't it be wonderful? Although this black-robed youngster's cultivation was not high, he was able to become the Azure Dragon Institute's first seat. It was better than being married off to some repulsive person by the clan and becoming a sacrifice for the clan's interest. A few little sluts. Bai Yun quietly swept a glance at each and every one of them. She quietly squeezed the girls who were leaning towards the black-robed youngster to the side. It wasn't easy for me to seize the initiative. How can I let you little bitches pick the peach? At this moment, Luan Xiaochuan, Su Jie, and Zhao Yuan came over with a group of medicine apprentices. Each medicine apprentice was holding a jade plate. On the jade plate there were vermilion fruits, jade peaches, spirit apricots, and other fruits. These fruits were the specialty of the Scarlet Sky Peak. Probably because they were contaminated with spirit energy, they had extraordinary effects. In addition, there were also some rare spirit fruits born from half-spiritual trees. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the fruits born from some fruit forests of the Scarlet Sky Peak. There aren't any rare spirit fruits in the wilderness, only some specialty products. Please forgive us for not receiving you well. Junior Marshal Brother Qin Feng, you're too modest. The girls shook their heads and swept a glance at the spirit fruits on the jade plate. Their expressions didn't change. They exchanged glances and discovered the shock in each other's eyes. This Junior Marshal Brother Qin Feng is really generous? Yun Mo had already cried out when she transmitted her voice. He's so rich that it's a mess. Look at that red guy. That's a 50-year-old vermilion fruit. It's a sacred fruit that helps one's foundation before the third heavenly layer of the martial path. He actually served it as an ordinary fruit to receive guests. That's right. There's also that 100-year-old jade peaches. They're the most valuable treasures used to nurture qi at the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path. There's also spirit apricots, spirit pears, and so on. These fruits overflow with spirit energy. They're all excellent products that nourish Xiantian true qi. They're exceptionally rare. Good fellow, this Junior Marshal Brother's status is not low. I've also been a guest in several Senior Marshal Brothers' abodes. Although those Senior Marshal Brothers were also cave masters, they didn't have such an imposing manner, obviously. They were all spirit fruits that were at least half a spiritual tree. In some small families, the girls had only seen their own patriarchs and elders enjoy such spirit fruit. Moreover, even if they could enjoy them, the number of times they could enjoy them was probably not many. But in front of them, one plate after another was served as if they didn't cost anything. Too extravagant, too rich. Tasting these rare delicacies in small mouthfuls, the girls' eyes were filled with extraordinary splendor. The atmosphere in the main hall became more harmonious. As the girls tasted the fruit wine, their gazes occasionally swept over the black-robed young man with traces of moving gentleness. Qin Feng didn't have any self-awareness in this regard. He, whose EQ was close to zero, only knew that honored guests had arrived and warmly received them. He simply didn't notice the increasingly moving gazes of the girls. After toasting, Luan Xiaochuan and Su Jie brought the girls to pick the black water spirit peach wood. Bai Yun pulled Qin Feng aside. Junior Marshal Brother, do you know that Lingjian Peak is about to open in a few days? Fourth update, there will be an update in the evening. Looking for recommendation votes, collection, reward. Chapter 164. Lingjian Peak. A trace of surprise flashed through Qin Feng's eyes. When he was in All Stars College, Qin Feng had heard some rumors about Lingjian Peak. Lingjian Peak was a sacred place of All Stars College that opened once every 10 years. Lingjian Peak was a place where swords were buried. Legend had it that it was originally the place where Craftsman Valley buried discarded swords. It was originally called Burial Peak. However, the swordsmiths of Craftsman Valley didn't expect that this randomly chosen place to bury swords turned out to be the rare hidden Dragonland. The discarded swords buried here were nourished by the hidden Dragonland's dragon veins and mutated. Many discarded swords repaired themselves, evolved, and became spiritual swords. Later on, a peerless magnate from the Myriad Stars Academy discovered the secret of this place, and with his peerless divine ability, he set up a sword-nurturing furnace here. With heaven and earth as the furnace and the dragon veins as the creation, it nourished the sword chi. Moreover, before he went into seclusion, he left his sword here. It was said that this peerless expert failed to break through and died in his cave. Later, there were predecessors who imitated this expert and went into seclusion, leaving their swords here. Gradually, this became a big tradition of All Stars College. Those who felt that they had no hope of breaking through would leave their swords here before they died. Among them, there was no lack of peerless spiritual swords left behind by these experts. It was rumored that there were peerless spiritual swords in the depths of Burial Peak. Even the strong cultivators did not expect that thousands of years later, the sword burial ground would actually become the holy land of the Myriad Star Academy. Later, All Stars College thought that the name of Burial Peak was unknown and changed its name to Lingjian Peak. Every 10 years, Lingjian Peak would open once. All Stars College's geniuses would go to Lingjian Peak to look for opportunities. If they could get a spiritual sword to recognize them as its master, their strength would increase greatly. Junior brother, do you want to try your luck? Lingjian Peak is one of the few secret realms that freshmen can enter. Moreover, it is an extremely important secret realm. In the past, there were many geniuses who obtained their favorite spiritual swords. After coming out, their strength will increase greatly. The white cloud fell on the ancient sword behind Qin Feng. Most of the students in All Stars College used swords, and there were quite a few of them who were good at swordsmanship. This junior brother Qin Feng in front of him was definitely one of them. The mysterious realm of the Lingjian Peak only opens once every 10 years. Every time it opens, only freshmen are allowed to enter. This is the only chance, so naturally, I can't miss it. Qin Feng walked out of the cave with a hint of eagerness in his eyes. Qin Feng took off the ancient sword on his back, the ancient sword Swan and Eye, and unsheathed it from its scabbard. A cold light flashed like the autumn waters. This ancient sword was an ancient weapon. Its blade was cold, and it could cut through hair and cut through iron like mud. It was far better than many other weapons. However, it was still an ordinary weapon and could not compare to a real spiritual sword. At Qin Feng's level, such ordinary weapons were no longer of much help. Seeing that Qin Feng was tempted, Bai Yun's eyes flashed with a hint of joy. He nodded and said, "Okay, when the Lingjian Peak opens, senior sister will accompany you?" Senior sister is also going to Lingjian Peak? Qin Feng looked at Bai Yun in surprise. Only freshmen were allowed to enter the mysterious realm of the Lingjian Peak. Bai Yun could not enter at all. This blockhead. Bai Yun's pretty face froze and her heart was stuffy. Bai Yun quickly adjusted her mentality and said calmly, "Senior sister is just going to watch the fun. Every 10 years, the Lingjian Peak is a feast for All Stars College. Senior sister is going to graduate in a few years, so you have to plan for yourself. Maybe you can take this opportunity to get a young talent. Junior brother, You are the head of the Azure Dragon sect and the master of the Blue Water Cave of the Scarlet Sky Peak. You have a distinguished status and a wide circle of friends. Can you introduce me to you?" Bai Yun's pair of beautiful eyes fell on Qin Feng and said half-jokingly, "So, you are going to see a handsome man?" Qin Feng came to a sudden realization. He patted his chest and said confidently, "Senior sister, you can rest assured. Leave it to me." Bai Yun was doomed to be disappointed. Testing Qin Feng, a guy with a low EQ, was a mistake. "Qin Feng." Bai Yun's pretty face tightened. She was so angry that she rolled her eyes. She fiercely stomped her little feet and angrily ran out of the cave. At the door, the girl in a black dress, Yun Mo, happened to walk in and saw this scene. The girl chuckled and glanced at Bai Yun, who angrily ran out. She turned around and looked at the confused black-robed youth with a faint smile. "Junior brother Qin Feng, did you bully junior sister Bai Yun when we were not here?" Qin Feng pursed his lips. "Senior sister Yun Mo, you are joking. With senior sister Bai Yun's strength, how could I bully her? Bullying me is more like it." Qin Feng was telling the truth. Senior sister Bai Yun's strength was unfathomable. Her aura was extremely restrained. Because of politeness, although Qin Feng did not carefully examine her, he knew that she was definitely weaker than the pulse condensation stage powerhouses he killed. Qin Feng guessed that senior sister Bai Yun had at least practiced the Martial Path Foundation cultivation technique to the 11th layer before breaking through to the pulse condensation stage. As everyone knew, breaking through to the pulse condensation stage from the 9th layer of the Martial Path and breaking through to the pulse condensation stage from the 10th layer of the Martial Path were two completely different concepts. Yunemo looked Qin Feng up and down a few times, nodded and said, "That's true. That violent girl Bai Yun took care of a giant cloud tiger by herself last time. Junior brother, your skinny body really can't withstand her ravaging." "So fierce?" Qin Feng gasped. The giant cloud tiger was an elite level 1 savage beast that was close to a level 2 savage beast. However, senior sister is much gentler? Yunemo walked over and glanced at the black-robed youth charmingly. She deliberately stuck out her full and straight chest. She had a face that could cause the downfall of a country, a slender neck, a slim waist, and a willowy butt. Her long black hair naturally fell, especially her snow-white and smooth chest. As she trembled, it stretched to an exaggerated arc, revealing a trace of snow-white fragrance. Gulp! Qin Feng's eyes were like magnets that couldn't help but fall on that snow-white and smooth chest. So big! Qin Feng's eyes quickly flashed. What's wrong with these seniors? Qin Feng wasn't stupid. On the contrary, he was extremely smart. He had already noticed the strange expressions of these girls, but he pretended not to know. Is this a test? Or a conspiracy? Qin Feng thought in his heart. His face had an expression that showed he was in control of his soul. Yun Mo's eyes flashed with a trace of charm, but there was also a trace of helplessness in her eyes. Since young, she was the pride of her family. However, she was still a girl and came from a large family. Yun Mo already knew that if you gain something, you lose something. Coming from a large family, she gained a lot, but she also lost a lot. For example, marriage autonomy. Free love was a dream. After receiving so many resources from her family, did she not need to repay them? However, entering All Stars College was an opportunity. There were many geniuses in All Stars College, and every one of them was not simple. This was the only place where one could freely love. This was also the reason why most of the students were willing to pay a huge amount of tuition fees to enter as a donor. Yun Mo's appearance was outstanding. Even in All Stars College, which produced beautiful girls, she was one of the best. Naturally, she had many suitors. However, although Yun Mo looked charming and affectionate, she was actually proud and arrogant. She looked down on the geniuses of All Stars College, who had fallen to the mortal world. All these years, she had been single and had kept herself clean. Looking at the black-robed young man in front of her, Yunemo had only heard about Qin Feng's performance from her close friend. With the initial stage of the eighth sky of the martial path, he killed many geniuses and finally became the Azure Dragon College's first seat. Originally, Yunemo didn't think highly of him and only held an attitude of watching. All Stars College was a college where geniuses gathered. There was no lack of geniuses and experts here. In All Stars College, there was a hidden dragon ranking. There were countless experts of the younger generation. Although Qin Feng was the Azure Dragon College's first seat, he wasn't even ranked in the top 300. However, after meeting Qin Feng, Yunmo's attitude gradually changed. Although this young man looked young and inexperienced, he wasn't arrogant, vain, or impetuous. On the contrary, Yunemo saw a rare calmness and confidence in his eyes. Yunemo had only seen this kind of calmness and confidence in the older generation experts of the Yun family. Thus, the scene of her testing the black-robed young man appeared. However, the black-robed young man's performance was somewhat disappointing. Fifth update: there are more updates at night. Chapter 165. Qin Feng stared at Yunmo's chest with a perverted look. Yunemo couldn't stand such a direct gaze. Her charming face remained as she rolled her eyes at Qin Feng flirtatiously. However, the expression in her eyes gradually turned cold as she walked out of the cave. Qin Feng stared at Yunmo's buttocks. Yunemo couldn't stand it anymore. She felt as if Qin Feng could see through her clothes. A trace of anger flashed through her eyes. Yunemo disappeared from Qin Feng's sight as if she was escaping. After Yunemo left, Qin Feng immediately retracted his perverted expression. He squinted his eyes and his gaze was unusually clear. They shouldn't have any ill intentions. Qin Feng felt that although these senior sisters acted strangely, they didn't have any ill intentions. But isn't it a little inappropriate to tease this senior sister like that? Qin Feng thought to himself and scratched his head. After 2 rounds of probing, the senior sisters became much colder. Originally, the 3 senior sisters were going to leave. However, Qin Feng invited them to stay and they decided to stay for the time being. Senior sister Lu Yi left that day. This beautiful senior sister had a cold personality and liked peace and quiet. She took the 4 Xian water spirit peaches and went to the Spirit Origin Hall to report on her mission. Not long after Lu Yi left, Qin Feng felt that the peak of the 8th heavenly layer of the martial way was finally complete. After swallowing the jade essence pill, his unstable foundation finally stabilized and he could start breaking through to the 9th heavenly layer of the martial way. Qin Feng was a little excited. Once he breaks through to the 9th heavenly layer of the martial way, his strength will definitely increase by a lot. He will be able to catch up to the top geniuses of the All Stars College in terms of cultivation realm. Qin Feng didn't immediately start breaking through. Instead, he calmed his mind and waited for all the distracting thoughts to disappear. Only then did he start breaking through under the Xian water spirit peach tree beside the heavenly lake. Beside the heavenly lake, under the Xian water spirit peach tree, the water spirit qi here was abnormally abundant. Strands of water spirit qi seeped out from the heavenly lake. Qin Feng sat cross-legged under the mystic water spirit peach wood, no longer suppressing the liquid primordial origin true qi in his body. The liquid primordial origin true qi began to circulate in his meridians. Strands of Xiantian true qi opened up some of the hidden acupuncture points in his body. The first tide, the second tide, the third tide, the 12th tide, the 13th tide, the 14th tide. The innate primordial origin true qi in his body turned into a tide. As the first tide surged, the second tide followed closely behind, pushing the innate primordial origin true qi to a higher level. When the Xiantian true qi in his body reached the 15th wave, The surging Xiantian true qi was like a torrent that broke through a dam, bombarding towards a secret acupoint. Divine Pass. This was an extremely important treasure point in the martial Dao body that contained the martial Dao divine treasure. The most important thing for the 9 heavens of the martial path was to break through the divine gate, fuse the martial path divine treasures, transcend mortality, and comprehend the 6th inspiration. There were as many as 4 levels of the God Gate. Normally, martial artists would be able to start transforming their essence, energy, and soul after passing through the first level, preparing to condense the heaven and earth seed. The thicker the foundation of an expert, the thicker the barrier of the martial path's divine gate. Boom. Qin Feng didn't know how rich the 15th wave of Xiantian primordial origin true qi was, but Qin Feng knew that it wasn't any weaker than the 11th level of Xiantian true qi in his previous life. When the 15th wave of Xiantian true qi converged, the accumulation of Xiantian primordial origin true qi reached its peak. Qin Feng felt as if he could hear the sound of the tides in the boundless ocean. The ferocious Xiantian primordial origin true qi bombarded the martial path's divine gate like a spiral. Qin Feng heard the roars of thousands of soldiers and horses, and the Xiantian true qi bombarded the martial path's divine gate. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were charging at the gates of an ancient city. Pung! Qin Feng's body trembled, and under the attack, the divine gate shook violently. A huge force rumbled, and a small crack appeared on the divine gate. In that crack, strands of flawless essence qi flowed. That strand of flawless essence qi was faintly discernible, and Qin Feng was like a shark that smelled blood. However, what made Qin Feng angry was that the martial path's divine gate, which was about to shatter, was repaired by that strand of essence qi. In the next moment, Qin Feng felt that the martial path's divine gate had become slightly thicker. Damn it! A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of Qin Feng's mouth. This kind of impact was a huge burden on Qin Feng's meridians. I was too hasty and I didn't have enough control. A lot of true qi went out of control and was wasted. The power of the true qi tide wasn't fully utilized. Qin Feng calmed down and learned his lesson. As the saying goes, the first drum builds up the spirit, the second exhausts the spirit, and the third weakens the spirit. There was only one chance left. If he couldn't break through the martial path's divine gate this time, he would be seriously injured by the backlash, and he wouldn't be able to try again for at least half a month. Half a month, this time was too long. If he failed, it might even affect the first comprehensive assessment of the academy. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. The retreating Xiantian true qi tide once again gathered in his meridians. Gradually, the first wave surged, followed by the second wave of Xiantian true qi tide that slapped on the first wave, increasing its momentum. This was a cycle. When the 15th wave surged, Qin Feng controlled his impulse to immediately break through the martial path's divine gate. Qin Feng learned his lesson and retreated the wave once again. Qin Feng needed to be prepared. He needed to perfectly control this Xiantian primordial chaos tide, allowing it to reach its true peak and break through the martial path's divine gate in one go. Once, twice, thrice, 10 times, 100 times, every time he was about to break through the martial path's divine gate, Qin Feng would use all his strength to control the almost uncontrollable true qi tide. After hundreds of attempts, Qin Feng gradually gained complete control of this Xiantian true qi tide. The time has come. After feeling that his control of the Xiantian true qi tide had reached a limit, Qin Feng was finally ready to break through the martial path's divine gate again. He took a deep breath. The Xiantian primordial chaos tide began to rise and fall, and the scattered Xiantian true qi in his meridians began to surge in one direction. The speed became faster and faster, and gradually, the first wave of Xiantian true qi tide was formed. Then, the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. When it reached the 15th wave of Xiantian true qi tide, Qin Feng once again heard the abnormally vigorous sound of the tide. It was like a raging wave hitting the shore, and like a thunderbolt. Bang! In the next moment, the 15th wave of Xiantian true qi tide condensed, and under Qin Feng's control, it instantly bombarded the incomparably thick martial path's divine gate like a spiral horn. Rumble! The sound seemed to pierce through the sky. The sturdy dam was broken by the flood, and an earth-shattering roar erupted. In an instant, a big hole was opened in the incomparably thick martial path's divine gate, and the Xiantian primordial chaos true qi broke through the divine gate, leading an incomparably vigorous divine treasure's essence qi into Qin Feng's Xiantian true qi. Qin Feng's divine gate of the martial path was 10 times thicker than ordinary people, and the divine treasure's essence qi contained in the divine gate was also 10 times richer than ordinary warriors. The moment this dragon-like divine treasure's essence qi fell down, rumble! Like a lit oil barrel, Qin Feng's body suddenly erupted with a terrifying aura, like a demon god that could shatter mountains and rivers. The terrifying qi around his body swept out like a sharp sword, and the area in front of him with a radius of a few feet was split open. Rumble! Water splashed everywhere. 2 charming figures descended like lightning, and their limpid eyes looked at Qin Feng in surprise. Break through the divine gate? The 9th heaven of the martial path? The aura around Qin Feng, who was sitting cross-legged under the black water spirit peach wood, began to climb crazily. The early 9th heaven of the martial path, the middle 9th heaven of the martial path, the late 9th heaven of the martial path, and in the blink of an eye, it surpassed the early 10th heaven of the martial path. This is the first update. The second update will be at 8 o'clock in the morning. Chapter 166. The aura on Qin Feng's body rose sharply. The early stage of the 9th heavenly layer, the middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer, the late stage of the 9th heavenly layer, and the great circle of the 9th heavenly layer. In just a few breaths, he broke through to the early stage of the 10th heavenly layer. His surging aura was still rising. In just a few breaths, Qin Feng's cultivation jumped by 2 big realms. This was extremely heaven-defying. Even some monstrous geniuses could only break through 2 small realms at most. The 2 young girls stared fixedly at Qin Feng's surging aura as their eyes trembled. Did he swallow some kind of spiritual flower or fruit? Yunemo sucked in a breath of cold air. At this moment, her amorous and charming eyes were filled with disbelief. Looking at the black-robed young man who was 100 steps away, Bai Yun calmly shook his head. No, this is because his foundation is too strong. A foundation that accumulates for thousands of years, soaring to the sky. Only Wushuang's martial arts foundation would allow him to break through 2 major realms in one go when he was about to break through. Just what kind of cultivation technique did this junior brother Qin Feng practice to actually have such a deep and unparalleled martial foundation? Impossible. How could he have such a terrifying foundation? Yun Mo's pretty face flashed with disbelief. She would never believe that a frivolous pervert like Qin Feng would have such a strong foundation. It was not that Yun Mo's endurance was too weak, but this kind of strong foundation was too shocking. She had never heard of anyone who could break through 2 big realms at once. 9 heavenly layers of the martial path. Each layer was a heavenly moat. This was absolutely not a lie. Yunemo was born noble and had seen a lot. It was not that she had never seen a genius with a strong foundation. Yunemo had seen a lot of rare geniuses and freaks that were hard to come by in 100 years or even 1,000 years. But she had never seen or even heard that someone's foundation could be so strong. I always thought that Junior Qin Feng relied on luck to win the first seat title from those geniuses of the Azure Dragon Institute. Now it seems that I have underestimated this Junior Qin Feng. Bai Yun murmured in his heart. The shock in his heart was indescribable. It's not just me. I'm afraid most of the geniuses are too full of themselves. Bai Yun's mouth revealed a trace of self-mockery. It's hard to imagine that a disciple at the 8th heavenly layer of the martial path would have such a terrifying foundation. Qin Feng was trying his best to suppress the surging aura. As the door to the 9th heavenly layer of martial arts was blasted open, the Yuan Qi hole in the void seemed to be forcibly opened. The amount of void energy Qin Feng could absorb through the heaven and earth bridge was more than twice as much as before. An endless stream of void Yuan Qi was being refined by the bridge of heaven and earth and fused into his body, tempering his martial body. His meridians were becoming thicker and thicker, and his internal organs were further strengthened. The essence of the divine treasures in the martial path divine pass was being refined. Qin Feng's entire body was glowing faintly as though he had been strengthened. He was like a devil that could tear apart mountains and rivers with his bare hands. Qin Feng activated his secret technique and began to suppress his realm. The qi of the 10th heavenly layer of the martial path began to fall. The peak of the 9th heavenly layer of the martial path, the late 9th heavenly layer of the martial path, and the middle 9th heavenly layer of the martial path. Suppressing himself to the middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer of the martial path was already the limit. The innate primordial essence qi had been refined countless times, and it seemed to be glowing. It was like an immortal and indestructible martial light. Its quality was terrifying, and a single strand of it was enough to shatter a huge rock. Qin Feng opened his eyes, and a faint blue light that was as bright as the stars appeared. Bai Yun and Yun Mo felt a terrifying pressure, as though they were facing an undefeatable existence. What a terrifying pressure! Bai Yun felt incredulous. Both of them were experts close to the 4th secret realm of the pulse condensation realm, but they actually felt a terrifying threat from a middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer of the martial path. However, this pressure was so real. Middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer of the martial path. Innate primordial unity qi, level 9. Maybe I can start cultivating the innate primordial essence tidal extinction 6th sword. Qin Feng waved his arms and easily broke through the air, causing a sonic boom. His body had been tempered to a terrifying level. At this moment, Qin Feng's body was no weaker than some ordinary pulse condensation realm martial artists. The so-called ordinary pulse condensation realm martial artists, in Qin Feng's mind, were experts who directly broke through to the pulse condensation realm after reaching the 9th heavenly layer of the martial path. Most of these pulse condensation realm experts had not mastered any martial arts skills. As for the innate qi in his body, Qin Feng slightly felt the surging innate qi in his meridians. At this moment, the innate qi in his body was no weaker than the peak of the 11th heavenly layer of the martial path in his previous life. Qin Feng stretched out a palm, and the strands of innate qi in his palm turned into an invincible innate invisible sword qi that could cut through the void. Under Qin Feng's control, the strands of innate invisible sword qi gradually condensed and turned into a transparent 6 feet long sword that glowed with a faint blue light. 6 feet of innate metal sword qi. This is the 6th level of the Herb Garden's Golden Gung sword art? Yun Mo's face was full of surprise. Qin Feng was a new disciple of the Herb Garden, and in less than 2 months, he had reached the 6th level of the Herb Garden's Golden Gung sword art. This talent was astonishing. As far as she knew, among the new disciples who entered the Herb Garden at the same time as Qin Feng, there were only a few people who had reached the 6th level of the Golden Gung sword art. It's 7 feet of innate metal sword qi, Golden Gung sword art's 7th level. Bai Yun corrected. Yun Mo raised her head. On Qin Feng's palm, the 6 feet innate invisible sword qi was still extending, and in the blink of an eye, the transparent sword that was purely made of innate invisible sword qi had extended to 7 feet. The Golden Gung sword art's 7th level was naturally broken through. In 2 months, he had reached the 7th level of Golden Gung sword art. Bai Yun and Yun Mo's beautiful faces were already numb. According to their knowledge, among this batch of new disciples, only the mysterious genius from the Xingqian school had reached this level. Lightly holding the long sword that was made of innate invisible sword qi, Qin Feng felt that this long sword was even more useful than the sword at his waist. A sharp light flashed in Qin Feng's eyes, and he poured all of his innate qi into the invisible long sword in his hand, and slashed at the heavenly lake. Whoosh! Whoosh! Noiselessly, an invisible gully that was several feet long was created in the heavenly lake, and it did not heal for a long time. It was as if a wound that could not heal for a long time had appeared in the heavenly lake. Formless heavenly Tao. Qin Feng had finally reached the third level of the sword Tao. A trace of joy appeared in Qin Feng's eyes. In the eyes of many sword Tao experts, the sword Tao was divided into different levels and realms. The first level was budding sword qi. The second level was 10,000 swords returning to origin. The third level was formless heavenly Tao. Without a doubt, Qin Feng had already broken through the 10,000 swords returning to origin realm and reached the formless heavenly Tao. The next level was flying sword technique. If he could break through the fourth level, flying sword technique, Qin Feng would definitely be able to fly on a sword. Just as Qin Feng's cultivation and sword Tao were breaking through consecutively, at the foot of the heavenly scarlet peak, a few white-scaled feather cranes descended. A few silver-robed disciples with solemn expressions walked down, and their gazes landed on the heavenly scarlet peak. This is the second update. The third update is around 10 o'clock. The fourth update is at noon. Chapter 167. While Qin Feng was adapting to his new strength, Luan Xiaochuan suddenly rushed to Qin Feng's side and whispered in his ear. "Cave Master, something bad has happened. Disciples of the Heaven Punishment Palace are here." Luan Xiaochuan was a little uneasy. Disciples of the Heaven Punishment Palace wouldn't come to the Scarlet Sky Peak so suddenly. Su Jie and Zhao Yuan also walked over, their expressions filled with deep concern. The reputation of the Heaven Punishment Palace wasn't very good. In the eyes of ordinary disciples, this group of people often represented bad luck and slaughter. The three of them were worried that the matter of Qin Feng killing the three outer disciples would be exposed. Heaven's Punishment Hall? Why did these people come to the Scarlet Sky Peak? Bai Yun also revealed a puzzled look. Qin Feng swept a few glances over and a cold smile appeared in his eyes as he said, "Don't panic, don't panic. Invite them up the mountain." Luan Xiaochuan nodded and hurried down. Not long after, Luan Xiaochuan walked up to a group of martial artists wearing silver robes with swords and sabers embroidered on their sleeves. The leader of this group of people was a silver-robed youth with a tall hat and wide belt. He had an old-fashioned face and carried a strange big sword on his back. Behind him were several silver-robed disciples with indifferent expressions and emitting a strange cold air. This was a murderous aura that only people who had killed or injured living beings would have. Obviously, these silver-robed disciples were people who had killed countless people. Judging from Luan Xiaochuan's address, the leader was called Jin Xiaowang and was a level 5 inner disciple of the Heaven Punishment Palace. Jin Xiaowang was about 24 or 25 years old. He had a strict bearing and his eyes were full of power. This young man had once served as a constable in the Jin Nation, Black Water Nation, Black Cloud Nation, Zhuzi Nation, and Cloud Water Nation. Jin Xiaowang's gaze swept across Bai Yun and Mo Yun's eyes and finally fell on the black-robed youth under the black water spirit peach wood. He sneered and said, "You are Qin Feng. You have the guts to kill the outer disciples of All Stars College and the Medicine Boys. You are in trouble. Come with us to the Heaven Punishment Palace." In the next moment, two silver-robed figures flashed out from behind Jin Xiaowang and pounced on Qin Feng. Jin Xiaowang did not give Qin Feng a chance to explain himself. He immediately gave the order to arrest him. His eyes were cold as he stared at Qin Feng as if he was a dead man. Qin Feng sneered. His body was like an ape as he swept his leg out. Bang bang! 2 silver-robed disciples with gloomy smiles on their faces holding shackles and chains were instantly sent flying. Rumble! The 2 figures fell into the lake and instantly became drowning dogs. Jin Shaowang's eyes flashed coldly as he shouted. Qin Feng, you dare to resist arrest? Resisting arrest? Nonsense! Qin Feng sneered as he swept his gaze over the group of silver-robed disciples who were glaring at him. His gaze was as sharp as a sword. With the likes of you, you dare to come to the Scarlet Sky Peak to capture people? Let's not talk about whether you have the ability to do so. Where's the evidence? Does everything require evidence? Even the Heaven's Punishment Hall can't be lawless? The Heaven's Punishment Hall had a great reputation and was feared by everyone in All Stars College. However, it was not enough to frighten Qin Feng. Bai Yun and Yun Mo were also shocked. Qin Feng actually swept the disciples of the Heaven's Punishment Hall into the lake with a sweep of his leg. This was simply audacious. The Heaven's Punishment Hall was an extremely bloody place in All Stars College. In All Stars College, everyone would feel insecure when they heard the name of the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Not only did Qin Feng not show any respect, he was ruthless and did not leave any face for them. Bai Yun transmitted his voice with a worried expression. Junior brother Qin Feng, you must be careful. These people are from the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Their leader, Jin Shaowang, is also very famous in the Heaven's Punishment Hall. He is very powerful and is one of the 6 Punishment Hall disciples. The Heaven's Punishment Hall is famous in All Stars College for being domineering and tyrannical. They seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Don't offend them too much. Otherwise, they won't let you off. Don't worry. The Heaven's Punishment Hall is domineering, but I'm even more domineering than them. Qin Feng sneered and transmitted his voice without fear. Jin Shaowang was enraged and said sternly. Evidence, of course we have evidence. Let me ask you, where are the 3 outer disciples of the Scarlet Sky Peak? Where is Su Ping? Qin Feng rolled his eyes and sneered. Are you really stupid or pretending to be stupid? Their legs are on their bodies, where did they run to? How would I know? I'm not their babysitter. Jin Shaowang was speechless. A moment later, he sneered. Qin Feng, you have a sharp tongue. It's useless to quibble. Yes, we have witnesses. Zheng Bing, come out. Jin Shaowang scolded. A young man wearing a green robe and the uniform of an alchemist walked over. This person was none other than the high-grade alchemist Zheng Bing, who had been suppressed. Qin Feng, you didn't expect this, did you? Today is your doomsday. Zheng Bing's face was gloomy as he stared coldly at Qin Feng like a dormant viper. His eyes were filled with resentment and complacency. It was filled with the arrogance of a villain who had achieved success. How dare you kill the 3 outer disciples? No one can save you. Zheng Bing. Seeing Zheng Bing walking out from the crowd of alchemists, Luan Xiaochuan and the other 2's faces turned gloomy as they gritted their teeth. Zheng Bing, you traitor who betrayed the cave master. Seeing the expressions of Luan Xiaochuan and the other 2, Zheng Bing was extremely pleased. His eyes were filled with coldness and complacency as he laughed. And you Luan Xiaochuan, Su Jie, Zhao Yuan, you 3 lackeys, your good days are coming to an end. Thinking of the dark days he had been suppressed by the 3 for the past 2 months, Zheng Bing's heart was filled with hatred. Jin Shaowang stood out and looked coldly at the black-robed young man as he shouted. Qin Feng, what else do you have to say now? Jin Shaowang and the other silver-robed disciples sneered as they stared at the black-robed young man with unfriendly gazes. No one dared to provoke the Heaven Punishment Palace. Many disciples were already thinking about how to torture Qin Feng after capturing him. Jin Shaowang, based on his one-sided words? Qin Feng laughed as a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Qin Feng turned around and pointed at Luan Xiaochuan and the other two. We all know Jing Bing. He has never been liked by this cave master in the Scarlet Sky Peak. He has always held a grudge against this cave master. How can his words be trusted? In this cave master's opinion, it is this villain who is dissatisfied with the way this cave master handled things. So he took the opportunity to stir up trouble. Qin Feng looked coldly at Jin Xiaowang and said, Jin Xiaowang, don't be deceived by this shameless villain. Jing Bing? Qin Feng's eyes revealed a trace of a sneer. This Jing Bing had always been unyielding and had been waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. How could Qin Feng not be on guard? Since Qin Feng knew that Jing Bing had ulterior motives, how could he not be on guard against this day? At that time, Qin Feng had signed a contract with all the medicine boys present. They were not allowed to reveal what they had seen or heard at that time. That was not an ordinary contract. It was called the Abyss Nether River Contract. Glancing at the complacent Jing Bing, Qin Feng's eyes flashed with killing intent. With a thought, a surging blood-red nether river appeared in the endless abyss. It was a blood-red river with endless white bones floating and evil spirits struggling. Just a glance at it would make one's divine soul fall. The instant the power of the blood-red nether river appeared, a contract that Qin Feng had set up instantly turned into ashes. An invisible force descended from the unseen world. In the next moment, Jing Bing died. The smile on his face stiffened and his eyes glazed over. He fell silently at Jin Xiaowang's feet. With a bang, his body turned into ashes and flew away. Jing Bing. Jin Xiaowang saw this scene with his own eyes and could not help but change his expression. In the next moment, Jin Xiaowang stared at Qin Feng and roared. Qin Feng, how dare you kill him? Although he did not know how Jing Bing suddenly turned into ashes, Jin Xiaowang instinctively believed that Qin Feng was behind it. Qin Feng sneered. Jin Xiaowang, Jing Bing was beside you just now. If we are talking about killing him, you are the most suspicious. Qin Feng, since you are so stubborn, I can only capture you and bring you back to the Heaven's Punishment Hall for interrogation. With a burst of killing intent in his eyes, Jin Xiaowang threw a punch. With one punch, the sky was filled with fist imprints. Qin Feng actually had the illusion that there was no place for more. A terrifying aura of death appeared in his heart. Although Jin Xiaowang was only in the first secret realm of the Meridian's condensation stage, his attacks were stronger than the third and fourth secret realm Meridian's condensation stage experts that Qin Feng had encountered before. Fourth update at noon. Chapter 168. Although Jin Xiaowang was only at the first level of the pulse condensation realm, he was much stronger than the third and fourth level pulse condensation realm cultivators that Qin Feng had met before. Sun Yang Emperor Tiger Seal. Unleashing his killer move, his body was like a demonic tiger coming down from the mountains. His black hair danced in the wind as strands of golden light twined around him. He threw out a punch that shook the heaven and earth. Innate Tidal Extinction Third Sword. The innate invisible sword energy in Qin Feng's hand was like silk being peeled from a cocoon. An invisible longsword condensed from innate invisible sword energy appeared in Qin Feng's hand. Holding the innate invisible sword, Qin Feng's eyes flashed fiercely. He waved his arm and infused his innate qi into the invisible longsword as he slashed out. The sword qi was as bright as the moon in the sky. The vast sword light slashed down like a wave. Bang! 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 The sky full of fist imprints were destroyed by the sword light. They were torn apart and slashed down towards Jin Xiaowang's head. Dang! 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 Jin Xiaowang's eyes shone with a golden luster as a 3 feet light golden qi wall appeared around him. The sword light slashed on the qi wall, creating a sound of metal clashing. Qin Feng, you do have some skills. No wonder you are so daring. A cold smile appeared on Jin Shaowang's face as a sharp golden light flashed in his eyes. However, you are still nothing in front of me. Suddenly, a golden light flowed around Jin Shaowang as he stood with his hands behind his back. It was as if an ancient godly sound was heard, as if a godly king was patrolling. Not good. This is one of the 9 great songs of All Stars College, the Golden Tao Melody. Golden Tao Melody. This is one of the 9 great songs, the Divine Massacre Melody. A few hundred steps away, Bai Yun's face changed drastically as he shouted. Junior Qin Feng, be careful. This is the Golden Tao Melody. It is the strongest Divine Massacre melody of All Stars College. The ethereal divine sound drifted about leisurely, as if it was flowing over from the primordial times. It resonated with the Grand Tao and was filled with an indescribable charm. At first, it was like Qin Feng's drizzle, but it gradually became like a high mountain and flowing water. In an instant, it became a magnificent army. There was a demonic killing intent contained within. At this moment, many of the apprentices began to bleed from their 7 apertures. Their bodies ruptured and their organs ruptured. Even their bones were about to melt. All the apprentice alchemists were terrified, and they retreated explosively in shock. The golden sound of the Tao had the power to shatter the heavens and rend the earth. Qin Feng stood at the place where the golden Tao sound attack was the most concentrated. The black-robed youth was expressionless and his black hair fluttered in the wind. He was actually unharmed. A faint layer of light circulated around his body like an invisible divine halo. Roar. A series of beastly roars that seemed to have originated from ancient times resounded. A light shadow appeared behind Qin Feng. The tide surged, and a tall and sturdy ancient divine beast seemed to have walked out from the river of time. It let out a long roar that shook the heavens. The black tortoise art of Yin Yang. With Qin Feng's advancement to the 9th level of the martial path, his cultivation had skyrocketed. This true martial level secret art had also increased in power. Jin Shaowang's expression changed slightly. The golden divine sound around him became louder and louder. It was as if the divine sound had materialized. It was like invisible blades that bombarded Qin Feng's light blue protective light. Rumble. The light blue protective light exploded and fluctuated violently as if it was about to be shattered by invisible blades. It was as dense as raindrops hitting a banana leaf. The yin and yang in Qin Feng's eyes changed, as if he had seen through the essence of the black tortoise. The black tortoise divine beast gradually changed. The Xiantian true qi gushing out of its pores turned into a tortoise and a snake. The tortoise and snake rotated and turned into a layer of light blue invisible earth energy. The earth energy contained the yin and yang of the black tortoise. At this moment, the black tortoise art of yin-yang finally changed. Deshang's black tortoise ocean suppressing earth energy and the spirit snake demon subduing earth energy gradually merged and turned into the most primitive black tortoise true qi. You are indeed the Azure Dragon Institute's first seat. You dare to borrow my power to break through on the spot. Jin Shaowang's eyes revealed a trace of surprise, but it quickly turned cold. No wonder you are so arrogant. But in my opinion, you are just a grasshopper in a cage. No matter how hard you jump, you will not be able to escape from your doom. The golden light in Jin Shaowang's eyes shattered. In the next moment, he appeared 100 steps away from Qin Feng. Holding a strange sword with golden light flowing in his hand, he slashed down with a loud bang. A terrifying pressure appeared in Qin Feng's mind. His pupils shrunk. This time, Jin Shaowang was serious. This slash was as if his soul was completely destroyed by it. The sword light shone brightly as it slashed down. The sky was filled with sword shadows that surrounded Qin Feng. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feng's Xiantian true qi flowed into his feet. The breeze god refining step burst out. He was like a breeze floating in the sky among the golden sword light. Like a wisp of breeze, he was everywhere. After a few breaths, Qin Feng's body appeared a dozen steps away. Huff huff. Breathing heavily, Qin Feng's face was slightly pale. His clothes were ragged and countless blood stains appeared on his skin. The gap was too big. The gap between the pulse condensation stage and the ninth sky of the martial path was too big. Qin Feng could kill those ordinary martial artists that had broken through to the pulse condensation period. But against someone like Jin Xiaowang, who had a solid foundation and might even have grasped the supernatural powers of martial arts, Qin Feng was suddenly at a disadvantage. Panting slightly, Qin Feng's whole body was in pain. His 5 fingers tightened on the invisible long sword. He thought to himself, "This is not good. This Jin Xiaowang is not easy to deal with. He has all kinds of tyrannical martial skills. Moreover, the pulse condensation stage cultivator cultivates true force. Although my Xiantian true qi is as hard as iron, it is still at a disadvantage against the pulse condensation stage's true force. When I slashed with my sword, he only needed to use true force to block it easily. But when he slashed with his sword, my Xiantian true qi form true aura was easily broken." Qin Feng's eyes changed. The pulse condensation stage's true force was too high quality. He was at a disadvantage in this kind of collision. I must find a way to get out of this unfavorable situation. Qin Feng is really amazing. He is at the 9th heaven of the martial path, and he is still undefeated after dozens of attacks from me. He is really terrifying. Jin Xiaowang was also secretly shocked at this time. He was at the 11th sky of the martial path. When he broke through to the pulse condensation stage, he condensed a middle-grade seed of heaven and earth. Compared to those who broke through to the 9th sky of the martial path and condensed a low-grade seed of heaven and earth, he was much stronger. However, he still could not defeat Qin Feng, who was at the 9th sky of the martial path. This is not good. This Qin Feng is already so difficult to deal with at the 9th sky of the martial path. If he breaks through to the pulse condensation stage, he will be unstoppable. Today I have already offended him. If he grows up and comes back for revenge, he will be a huge threat. Today I cannot let him live. I must kill him, even if it means breaking the rules of the Heaven's Punishment Hall. Jin Xiaowang's heart was filled with murderous intent. Jin Xiaowang's eyes fell on the black-robed teenager. His eyes flashed fiercely. "Use your special ability to kill this kid." At the moment when Jin Xiaowang's murderous intent rose, Qin Feng's hair stood on end. A substantial aura of death covered his mind like a dark cloud. Qin Feng thought to himself, "Not good. This is the 4th update. Please recommend it. Please add it." 5th update in the afternoon. Chapter 169. At first, the Heaven Punishment Hall was a place to punish the unruly students of All Stars College who had committed grave mistake. Later on, the Heaven Punishment Hall gradually walked on its own path. Some of the talented geniuses observed the path of the Heaven Punishment Hall and found their own divine skills. They integrated them into their own martial arts and formed all kinds of heaven punishment martial arts with great killing intent and terrifying power. Observing the Tao of Heaven and executing the Heaven Punishment Hall. The Tao that Jin Xiaowang comprehended was the Tao of gold punishment. The martial arts that he was good at was the Golden Emperor God-slaying art. It was a high-class spiritual martial realm technique with great power. Jin Xiaowang comprehended a shocking martial arts divine skill called the By Emperor Golden Emperor slaying art. Qin Feng, I admit that you are a genius. You are able to fight against a pulse condensation stage expert at the 9th sky of the martial path. But today, I will tell you that there is always a higher mountain. Although you are a genius with great potential, it is easy for you to fall. Not all geniuses have a smooth journey. Since ancient times, there have been countless young geniuses who have fallen. Jin Shaohuang's body lit up with a blazing golden light. The golden light gathered above his head and a sharp aura was revealed. A single strand of aura was enough to split mountains and rivers. Once this golden light burst out, it would be extremely terrifying. Seeing this golden light, Bai Yun and Yun Mo's expressions changed drastically. Bai Yun transmitted her voice. Qin Feng, be careful. This is Jin Shaohuang's famous divine skill, the Bai Emperor Golden Emperor slaying art. This divine skill can absorb the qi of gung metal from heaven and earth and control the power of gung metal. It is extremely sharp and terrifying. Bai Yun was worried. Jin Shaohuang had been famous for a long time. He had dominated the 5 countries and was one of the best among the 6 great punishment masters. With this divine skill, Jin Shaohuang had even killed the infamous bandit King Butcher in the Wu Yun country. Butcher had dominated the Wu Yun country and came and went like the wind. He had even killed a pulse condensation stage expert who had mastered divine skills. Such a person had died in the hands of Jin Shaohuang. When this golden light appeared, Qin Feng's soul trembled. He felt a great threat. Qin Feng felt as if there was a sharp sword hanging on his body. It was as if he was standing on a heaven punishment stage with the god-slaying axe hanging above his head. Qin Feng was locked onto by this sacred art. Qin Feng felt that no matter where he ran to, he wouldn't be able to escape from the golden light. A metal attribute innate technique. A terrifying pressure appeared in his heart as Qin Feng's expression sank. Among the basic attributes, mutated attributes, powerful attributes, and supreme attributes, although it was only a basic attribute, its attack power was exceptionally strong. Divine skill. This divine skill was definitely divine skill. Slightly sneering, a beam of ice blue light exploded from Qin Feng's eyes, locking onto Jin Shaohuang. Qin Feng also had a natural divine ability. Divine. In the next moment, Jin Shaohuang's expression changed drastically. His qi and blood went berserk, and wisps of frost appeared on his hair. Poochie! With a muffled groan, Jin Shaohuang's qi became disordered. The golden light above his head shattered like a broken sword, giving out a clear sound of metal clashing. Jin Shaohuang's face changed. He did not expect Qin Feng, a 9th heavenly realm martial artist, to have a divine skill. Moreover, it was a divine skill, a divine skill. He was at a disadvantage. The blood in his body seemed to have frozen. If not for his true force, he would have turned into a block of ice. Jin Shaohuang suppressed the anger in his heart. The Golden Emperor true force melted the ice in his body. In just a few breaths, half of the ice in his body was melted. But in the next moment, his face turned pale. He looked up and saw a figure pouncing on him like 9 divine dragons. Kill him while he's down. Qin Feng was like a violent dragon. This time, Qin Feng pulled out the ancient sword on his back. Innate tidal extinction, 5th sword. Innate primordial true qi surged into the ancient sword. Qin Feng was in midair. He held the sword hilt with both hands and thrust it forward. It was like a spinning top that was thrusting out. Fast to the extreme. The sword light burst out, piercing through the void. In an instant, it reached Jin Shaohuang's chest. The piercing sword qi gave Jin Shaohuang the illusion that his soul was being pierced through. Jin Shaohuang took in a cold breath. One wrong step. It was too late for him to dodge. Anger flashed in his eyes. Jin Shaohuang's Golden Emperor true force surged into the long sword on his back. He held the sword with both hands, ignoring the pain of his blood qi being frozen. He tried his best to hold the sword in front of him. Dang! The unparalleled sword qi hit the big sword. It was as if the sword qi hit a tough rock. The invisible sword edge swept past the huge sword, and the sword qi was like a wave that surged to the sky. Bang! The huge force hit the back of the sword. Jin Shaowang could not hold the sword anymore. His body was pushed back by the huge force, and he was thrown dozens of feet away like a broken doll. Poochie! He spat out a mouthful of blood chi in the air. Vaguely, he spat out some frozen internal organs. Rumble! His body fell into the heavenly lake like a cannonball. Punishment Master! The faces of the Heaven Punishment Palace disciples changed as they shouted. An outer disciple of the Heaven Punishment Palace walked out with a gloomy face and shouted angrily. Qin Feng, how dare you kill Punishment Master Jin? With a flash of his silhouette, Qin Feng appeared 100 steps away. Qin Feng's countenance was pale, and his body was floating in the air. When he moved slightly, his entire body felt sore and limp, and he almost couldn't hold the ancient sword in his hand. This sword strike had used up all of Qin Feng's Xiantian True Qi. Especially the last sword strike, when it struck back from Jin Shaowang's body, almost caused Qin Feng's entire body to be shaken to pieces. Jin Shaowang was unexpectedly strong. Even under this kind of almost certain death situation, he still had the strength to counterattack Qin Feng. Hearing this, Qin Feng coldly glanced at the Heaven's Punishment Hall's disciples. Are you guys stupid? He wants to kill me, so why can't I kill him? Qin Feng's eyes were filled with killing intent. At this moment, the disciples of the Heaven Punishment Palace felt like they were being stared at by the god of death. The experts felt a chill run down their spines. Even those cruel bandits who had killed countless people did not have such a terrifying gaze. Could it be that he wanted to silence them? The disciples of the Heaven Punishment Palace started to feel uneasy. Bai Yun and Yun Mo hesitated for a moment before walking over and landing beside Qin Feng. The experts from the Heaven's Punishment Palace were even more fearful. Bai Yun and Yun Mo were not nameless people, especially when the two women were famous and had countless suitors. There were even many people in the Heaven Punishment Palace. Senior Brother Wang Yu, Senior Brother Zhao Kong, what should we do now? Behind the two outer disciples, the Heaven Punishment Palace's experts gritted their teeth. Wang Yu and Zhao Kong were in a difficult position. Cough cough. At this moment, a coughing sound came from the lakeside. Jin Shaowang crawled out of the lake. Jin Shaowang's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Cold air was emitting from his body as he lay on the lakeside, looking extremely miserable. Jin Shaowang had managed to block Qin Feng's final attack, but that attack's power was too terrifying. Although he managed to block it, his internal organs were still shaken. Jin Shaowang's internal organs were already injured by Qin Feng's divine ability. Now that he was heavily injured, the cold air seeped into his internal organs, leaving him with only half a life. Jin Shaowang was unyielding. He gritted his teeth and endured the pain without uttering a single sound. Senior Brother Jin. Wang Yu and Zhao Kang's figures flickered as they hurriedly dragged Jin Shaowang out of the lake. Both of them glared at Qin Feng with hatred. Qin Feng, our Heaven Punishment Palace will not let you off. A cold light flickered in Qin Feng's eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. The group of people dragged Jin Shaowang down the Scarlet Sky Peak. Even Jin Shaowang suffered a great loss? After the group of people left, a handsome young man wearing an aqua blue robe appeared on a mountain peak not far from the Scarlet Sky Peak. The handsome young man looked in the direction of the Scarlet Sky Peak in surprise, and his eyes were gloomy. This is the 5th update. There will be more updates after midnight. Please recommend it, please bookmark it. Chapter 170. After Jin Shaowang and his group left, Qin Feng sat on the ground without a care for his image. Cave Master! Junior Brother Qin Feng. A few shouts came, and a delicate fragrance came. Qin Feng looked up and saw Bai Yun, Luan Xiaochuan, Su Jie, and Zhao Yuan gathered. Junior Brother Qin Feng, are you hurt? Bai Yun's delicate face was full of worry, and her beautiful eyes were almost all fixed on the handsome and stubborn black-robed young man. At this time, the black-robed young man was in a terrible state. His clothes were ragged, and there were many wounds on his body. His black robe seemed to be stained with blood. It was as if he had been cut dozens of times. It was a shocking sight. Qin Feng moved slightly, and a sharp pain came from his wounds. Qin Feng had a smile on his face. He was already used to such pain. "Don't worry, it's just that I use too much true qi, so I'm a little weak." With a touch of warmth in his eyes, Qin Feng smiled at the white-robed girl. In the void, a steady stream of true qi came through the bridge of heaven and earth and was refined by Qin Feng. His true qi gradually recovered. The Xiantian true qi was like the source of life, and it nourished the wounds. Some of the wounds had already scabbed. Yun Mo's watery eyes fell on the black-robed young man who was resting on the black water spirit peach wood. She glanced at the concerned Bai Yun, and a trace of complexity flashed in her beautiful eyes. "Don't worry, junior sister Bai Yun, this guy won't die. I can see that his essence qi is vigorous. Except for some flesh wounds, there are no internal injuries. It's just that if I didn't see it with my own eyes, it's hard to imagine that Jin Shaowang would suffer a big loss in the hands of such a frivolous and unbearable little pervert who is only at the 9th heaven of martial path." Yun Mo's tone was sarcastic. She glanced at the black-robed young man, snorted, and turned away. Qin Feng opened his eyes and glanced at the black-robed girl. Obviously, the black-robed girl was angry with him. Qin Feng pursed his lips. This girl was still blaming him. If she didn't pretend to be so charming to seduce him, he wouldn't have taken advantage of her. After resting for a moment, Qin Feng stood up. At this time, the wounds on his body had almost healed. His majestic aura was like the sun in the sky. His cultivation at the middle stage of the 9th heavenly layer had been completely stabilized. What a strong recovery ability! Although a martial artist's recovery ability is extremely strong, is it really this exaggerated? Not only Luan Xiaochuan, Su Jie, and Zhao Yuan were shocked. Bai Yun's beautiful eyes lit up when she saw this. Even if it was a pulse condensation period martial artist that had been baptized by the power of the world, their physique wouldn't be so strong. In the next few days, Qin Feng tried his best to stabilize his realm and familiarize himself with the power of the 9th heaven of martial arts. There were 4 divine gates to break through the 9 heavens of the martial path. Qin Feng had only broken through the first divine gate. Generally speaking, once one broke through the first divine gate of martial arts, they would have the qualifications to attack the pulse condensation period. As long as their concept reached perfection, they would be able to condense a world seed. In reality, this kind of condensed heaven and earth seed was incomplete and was seen as inferior by most experts. In other words, it was the so-called inferior grade. Therefore, an incomplete first divine gate was called an incomplete divine gate. But once the second divine gate was broken through, the third divine gate would be different. One could continue to excavate the essence of the divine gate. Every time a divine gate's essence was obtained, one's foundation would become stronger. However, only a small number of top foundation establishment cultivation methods could open the second divine gate, third divine gate, and even the most difficult fourth divine gate. Generally speaking, after opening the second divine gate and third divine gate, the condensed heaven and earth seed would be denser than the average martial artist. Naturally, after breaking through to the pulse condensation period, the heaven and earth seed would be strengthened for a longer time. Therefore, this kind of heaven and earth seed with more essence and more complete divine aperture was called a middle-grade heaven and earth seed by martial artists. Only when all 4 divine gates were broken through could it be considered a perfect divine gate. It could condense a perfect heaven and earth seed. A perfect heaven and earth seed had 9 orifices and 8 holes. There was an ancient Taoist scripture that said, 9 orifices could connect to the gods. pre-celestial transmutation unity law was a top foundation establishment cultivation method of the 13 heavens of the martial path. Its ultimate state was to open the fourth divine gate and forge a perfect divine gate. In 3 days, Qin Feng gradually mastered the explosive power of the 9 heavens of the martial path. At the same time, the 8th layer of Golden Gung Slaughter Sword Art gradually appeared. The 4th day was the opening day of Lingjian Peak. Early morning, the Scarlet Sky Peak was bathed in the crimson light of dawn. The horizon was filled with a boundless sea of clouds. A red sun leaped out from the sea of clouds, dividing the horizon. It was indescribably magnificent. Qin Feng sat cross-legged on the cliff, inhaling and exhaling the purple energy of the morning sun to temper his body. Purple energy lingered between his eyebrows, and his black robe was bathed in the crimson light. He was like a god descending to the mortal world, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. Bai Yun and Yun Mo walked over from the side of the mountain, talking and laughing. The two of them were like fairies. Seeing the black-robed youth sitting cross-legged, the black-skirted girl turned her face away and snorted coldly. Qin Feng seemed to have sensed something. He opened his eyes, and a wisp of purple energy flashed through his dark pupils. Junior brother, Lingjian Peak is opening today. We have to set off. Bai Yun walked up. She was a charming girl in a white palace dress, and her hair was combed into a beautiful bun. Her fair and delicate face revealed a trace of moving rosy. Do you want senior sister to give you a ride? The girl slightly tiptoed. When she asked this sentence, her pretty face was slightly hot. Senior sister, don't even think about it. This little pervert must have asked for it. Any man would agree to be with a great beauty like you. Not to mention this big-tailed pervert. Glancing at Qin Feng, the black-skirted girl's charming face revealed a trace of disdain. Qin Feng said lazily as he stood up and stretched his body, expelling the trace of laziness from meditating for an entire night. Yun Mo, are you jealous? Why don't you just tell me that you've fallen in love with me ever since I defeated that idiot Jin Xiao Wang with my invincible might? Why do you have to be so secretive? After saying that, Qin Feng glanced at Yun Mo's trembling snow-white chest that touched his heartstrings. Seeing how big your breasts are, this cave master will be merciful and consider taking you in. Qin Feng, you big pervert! Yun Mo shouted as if someone stepped on her tail. She covered her chest with one hand, guarding against Qin Feng as if he was a thief. However, her snow-white chest was too tall and straight, which made it more attractive. Yun Mo gritted her teeth and was about to resort to force. Bai Yun helplessly looked at the two bickering people. Since the black-skirted girl learned that Qin Feng deliberately played with her, she had been at odds with the black-robed youth. When the two met, they were also angry. Bai Yun pulled the two apart and said, "Okay, you two really have a grudge in your previous life. Spirit Sword Peak will only open for 1 day. We must speed up. If we miss this opportunity, we will have to wait for 10 years. It doesn't matter to us, but junior brother Qin Feng, you can't miss this opportunity. If you can find a suitable spiritual sword, your Golden Gung slaying sword art will even reach perfection in 1 go. As usual, tomorrow will also be 5 chapters. Please recommend me." Chapter 171. Bang! The sound of a broken vase came from the cave. Groups of delicate and pretty girls ran out of the cave while covering their faces. They lowered their heads and looked pitiful. In the celestial cave of Celestial Water Lake, Yu Fuchen had already broken countless of his beloved antique. In the center of the cave, Yu Fuchen walked out with a gloomy face. His eyes were filled with anger. Failed again. His plan to sacrifice his pawn had failed. After the 3rd time, he had failed again. All the spies were dead. First, it was the 3 outer disciples of the Scarlet Sky Peak. Now it was Jing Bing. Young Emperor Jin is also a trash. I thought he would have some ability as one of the 6 punishment masters of the Heaven Punishment Hall. I didn't expect him to not even be able to deal with a martial artist at the 8th heavenly layer of the martial Tao. What a waste of those trash praising him. At this moment, Yu Fuchen was somewhat regretful. It wasn't that he regretted dealing with Qin Feng, but that he had asked for too little benefits from Zhu Jian. This won't do. This Qin Feng is getting more and more difficult to deal with. I have to think of a foolproof plan to kill him in one strike. I can't give this brat any chance to grow. Otherwise, he will become a great enemy in the future. Yu Fuchen lowered his head and pondered. A glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. That's right. The opening of the Lingjian Peak is imminent. The opening of the Lingjian Peak is a great opportunity for all the freshmen. Qin Feng will definitely not give up. He will definitely rush to the Lingjian Peak. Yu Fuchen's mouth curved into a cold smile. He quickly had an idea in his mind. Yu Fuchen wasn't best at killing people head-on. He had never been good at killing people head-on. This was because it was not only dangerous, but it would also have many unknown effects regardless of whether he succeeded or failed. What Yu Fuchen liked and was best at was to kill with a borrowed knife, borrowing someone else's knife to kill his own enemy. In the sea of clouds, Qin Feng stood on the back of the white sparrow. His black hair danced in the wind. Junior Qin Feng, why don't you change your mount? This white sparrow is the lowest grade of ferocious birds. Not only is it slower than other ferocious birds, but it also has no attack power. Bai Yun flew with the wind, like a goddess of the 9 heavens in the sea of clouds. Qin Feng enviously looked at White Cloud. White Cloud was a wind attribute to Shang martial artist. Once he broke through to the pulse condensation period, he would be able to ride the wind and fly. Among the many attributes, only martial artists who cultivated wind attribute true power in the meridian's condensation stage could fly. In the sea of clouds not far away, a black light broke through the clouds and appeared in front of the 2 people. Yunemo was flying on his sword. This was the symbol of the 4th realm of Sword Tao. The black-dressed girl was actually an expert at the 4th level of the Sword Tao. Senior Sister Baiyun, can't you tell? Our cave master Qin is now a pauper. I can't afford a high-grade raptor. The girl in the black dress giggled, her expression exceptionally joyful. Cuckoo! As though sensing that someone was looking down on it, Silly Bird chirped in discontent. At this time, Silly Bird was even more handsome than it was 2 months ago. Its wide wings were dozens of zhang wide, its soft feathers pure white and flawless, carrying threads of coldness. Qin Feng gently stroked the ahog on Silly Bird's head and glanced at the black-dressed girl. Ignore her. When you evolve into a white jade ice sparrow, you'll beat her until she's looking for her teeth on the ground. Yunemo smiled coldly. With just her, even if she becomes a rank 2 ice snow 3-tailed sparrow king, this girl can beat her so badly that she won't even recognize her master. I think you should change your steed as soon as possible. Cuckoo! Silly Bird was furious and gave a loud cry. The sound was crisp and rang through the clouds like the cry of a phoenix. This damned woman dares to look down on me and encourage master to abandon me. This bad woman. A thick layer of cold energy surged on Silly Bird's body like boiling water. Her wings were wide open, and the usually dumb bird eyes had the viciousness unique to high-level predators. This Silly Bird has a temper? Yunemo showed a hint of shock when she was stared at by Silly Bird's vicious eyes. The white sparrow was a vicious beast, but its personality was famed for being docile. Yet it had such a gaze now. With a long cry, the cold energy on Silly Bird's body grew thicker and wrapped around Silly Bird's body. Her presence grew stronger. Like a breakthrough? Bloodline awakening about to evolve? On Silly Bird's back, as Silly Bird's master, Qin Feng immediately felt this change. However, Silly Bird seemed to be doing her best to suppress the cold energy she gave off. This was protecting her master. Silly Bird was afraid the cold energy would harm Qin Feng. Bai Yun and Yunemo also saw the growing coldness on the white sparrow's body. This white sparrow was going to evolve at this time? The two women's expressions changed slightly. They exchanged a look and found the shock in each other's eyes. The white sparrow was a vicious bird like its fellow crimson fire sparrow and yellow cliff sparrow. There were many of them in the wilderness, and they were the most inconspicuous bird. This kind of bird was extremely hard to evolve. The chance of evolving was 1 in a million. Qin Feng immediately understood the white sparrow's thought. A hint of a smile appeared on his face. Qin Feng sent a message coolly. Evolve, don't suppress yourself. Receiving Qin Feng's approval, Silly Bird no longer suppressed herself. A tangible coldness exploded from her body and threads of coldness gathered on each of her feathers. Her wings flapped and a layer of cold wind howled. Many of the clouds slowly turned black and it started to drizzle. An extremely cold and pure coldness exploded with Silly Bird as the center. Silly Bird's wings wrapped around her entire body like a ball. Qin Feng's figure jumped and left Silly Bird's back. But after leaving the white sparrow's back, Qin Feng's figure instantly fell downwards. In the distance, Bai Yun's beautiful eyes moved. Her figure flashed and she gently supported Qin Feng with one hand. The two stood in the wind. Not far away, Yun Mo's shoulders trembled slightly but quickly recovered. Her eyes moved and she looked at the man and woman supporting each other before looking away. Bai Yun's face was slightly red. It was the first time she had been so close to a man. Qin Feng did not notice the change in the two women. His gaze landed on Silly Bird, who was curled up together. Silly Bird was the lowest level white sparrow, but her bloodline was extremely pure. In these 2 months, she had enjoyed many benefits following Qin Feng. The ice attribute cold soul ling water had been supplied to this Silly Bird, and the ling fruits and precious herbs on Crimson Sky Peak. Those ling fruits and herbs were not of great help to Qin Feng, but for Silly Bird it was heaven. Those ling fruits and herbs were of unimaginable help to this Silly Bird. In these days, Silly Bird's feathers had become more beautiful and nimble with each passing day, and her body had become more and more handsome. Today, there was finally a qualitative change from a quantitative change. Start to evolve. An hour later, a ball of thick cold energy exploded. Accompanied by a clear cry, a snow-white spirit sparrow appeared in Qin Feng's eyes. This was an ice sparrow. The snow-white feathers gave off threads of cold energy that seemed tangible. Silly Bird's round tail feathers had become long and beautiful, like the tail of a phoenix. Her body became slightly flatter as though she was thinner and smaller. But her two wings were even grander. When she spread her wings, her speed was multiple times faster. The greatest change was Silly Bird's presence. She was not any less than a Ningmai. Today is still 5 chapters. This is the 2nd and 3rd chapters. Chapter 172. Spirit Sword Peak. In the Spirit Sword Peak's valley, there was a huge square with neat rocks and a huge copper cauldron in the center. The surrounding mountains were straight and dangerous, like ancient swords that were tens of thousands of feet tall. What was strange was that these endless mountain peaks did not have ancient trees or cypresses growing on them. Instead, they had ancient swords of different styles. These were simply mountains of swords. In the mountains of swords, Sword Chi soared to the sky. As soon as an ordinary person approached these mountains of swords, they would feel as if 10,000 swords were piercing their body. If a formation grandmaster was here, he would realize that these hundreds of miles of sword mountains were a terrifying super formation. This strange valley was the center of Spirit Sword Peak. Looking down from above, there was a furnace cauldron located here. The valley was the mouth of the cauldron. It was rumored that one of the 6 most mysterious places of All Stars College, the Deity Sword Mountain Villa, was located in this endless mountain of swords. Spirit Sword Peak opened once every 10 years. Every time, only new students were allowed to enter to try their luck. This year, there were tens of thousands of new students in All Stars College. Most of them had already received the news and rushed here to look for opportunities. At this time, in the center of the Spirit Sword Valley's square, there was a huge black copper sword that rose from the ground and was more than 10,000 feet tall. Looking from afar, it gave people a heavy pressure. With the presence of this giant sword, no one was able to step into the square. Some people tried to enter the square, but the next moment, they vomited blood and flew out. At this time, the square was bustling with young powerhouses. Countless blazing eyes stared at the center of the square. This was the sword testing stage. The crowd was very lively. Some people looked at the sky. At this time, outside the valley, there was a young powerhouse slowly walking in from outside the valley. Wherever he passed, countless young geniuses made way for him. Obviously, the person who came was very powerful and made people afraid. He was one of the few powerhouses of the younger generation. This was a young expert. His figure was slender, and his skin was bronze-colored. His black hair was made into countless small braids that hung down behind his shoulders. He carried a strange large sword on his back, and his eyes were shining brilliantly. He gave off an incomparably wild feeling. It's Vermilion Bird Academy's Tuobayi. It's actually him. The opening of the Lingjian Peak actually attracted such a big shot. In the crowd, someone recognized the origin of this young man and exclaimed, "Why, do you know him? How could I not know him?" This Tuobayi is one of the strongest young geniuses of the Vermilion Bird Academy, and his cultivation has reached the 10th layer of the martial Tao. Moreover, the most terrifying thing about him is the sword on his back. It is said that during the Vermilion Bird trials, this person had used the sword in his hand to kill a powerful ancient savage beast with the bloodline of an ancient savage beast. This time, the opening of Lingjian Peak actually alarmed him. It's not just Tuobayi. Look, Azure Dragon Institute's Li Qiubai and Yuan Daozhen are also there. A month ago, Yuan Daozhen had single-handedly defeated the joint attack of more than 10 peak 9th celestial layer cultivators. He's really famous. At this time, there was another uproar. Azure Dragon Institute's Yuan Daozhen and Li Qiubai appeared together at the entrance of the valley. Black Tortoise Institute's sword experts are also here. It's Wan Jianxing and Wan Gi. Hiss, it's actually them. These two are known as the Black Tortoise Duel Masters, and they are second only to the Black Tortoise Institute's first seat. It is said that when the two of them join forces, even the first seats of the 4 great academies may not be a match for them. With a few exclamations from the crowd, 2 young men who looked exactly the same appeared at the entrance of the valley. Their eyes were cold, and they were like 2 peerless divine swords. Azure Dragon Institute, Vermilion Bird Institute, and Black Tortoise Institute have all sent their sword experts here. I wonder if White Tiger Institute has sent any sword experts to try their luck this time. I heard that White Tiger Institute's sword experts have gathered together this time. There are more than 10 sword experts who have entered the second stage of Sword Principles, the 10,000 Swords realm. There are even a few who have entered the third stage of Sword Principles, the Invisible Way of the Heavens. Their leader, Ling Duxiu, is even known as the Sword King. It seems that this time, the opening of Lingjian Peak is really a rare event. Look, someone else has failed to pass the sword testing stage. Suddenly, several cries of surprise came from the crowd. A handsome young man dressed in luxurious brocade clothes fell from the square with a loud crash. Poochie! Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the handsome young man's face turned pale. He raised his head and looked at the giant sword in the middle of the square with difficulty. The young man's handsome face was full of unwillingness and disbelief. This seems to be Nangong Ling, the legitimate son of the Azure Cloud Marquis family of the Cloud Water Empire's Chongqing province. Nangong Ling, I've heard of him. He's a famous genius in our Cloud-Water Empire. He became the disciple of the Cloud-Water Empire's famous sword principle expert, Venerable Lifeless, and learned the essence of Venerable Lifeless' 7 killing swords. This person was also ranked in the top 16 in the Vermilion Bird Institute's trial, but he actually failed. The voice was full of disbelief. Nangong Ling's reputation was very big, and he had a lot of friends. Whether it was in the Vermilion Bird Institute or the other 3 institutes, his name was very well known. On the side, a young man with a profound aura held his sword and slowly shook his head. This is not strange. From the opening of Lingjian Peak until now, the number of people who can pass the sword testing stage can be counted on one hand. A brawny man with a big sword on his back also chuckled. That's the reason. This sword testing stage is not for ordinary people to go up. The countless spirit swords in the various peaks all have spirituality. When a martial artist chooses a sword, the spirit swords will also choose their master. Most of the spirit swords have strong natures. They would rather hide themselves and be buried in the sword mountain than choose a mediocre person as their master. And this sword testing stage is an extremely important part. If you can't even walk up the sword testing stage, how can you talk about the spirit swords choosing their masters? There were 2 girls on the side listening to the conversation. One of the girls in colorful clothes couldn't help but speak. Greetings to the 2 young masters. I'm Yu Hong. From what the 2 young masters said, it seems that this sword testing stage has other mysteries. These 2 girls were not strangers. They were really the Yu sisters who came to try their luck. Yu Hong, Yu Yao. Hearing someone suddenly speak, the young man holding the sword was originally a little unhappy, but when he saw the 2 girls' appearance, his expression couldn't help but relax and smile. So it's the 2 young ladies. You're too polite. Seeing the 2 pairs of limpid eyes staring unblinkingly at him, the young man holding the sword puffed out his chest and tried his best to show off. There isn't anything special about this sword testing stage. The reason why it's called the sword testing stage is because it tests the sword master's sword Dao cultivation. What is sword Dao cultivation? Yu Yao's beautiful eyes turned as she asked in a delicate voice. Sword Dao cultivation is the sword master's sword Dao realm. If your sword Dao realm isn't high enough, even if your sword Dao cultivation reaches the heavens, you won't be able to take a step onto the sword testing stage. However, if you can walk onto the sword testing stage, you will definitely gain something. A trace of envy flashed in the eyes of the young man holding the sword. The spirit swords in this mountain were nurtured by the heavens and earth. There are many spirit swords of excellent quality. Many of the spirit swords are enough to be the world-suppressing spiritual treasures of a sect or clan. Not to mention, there are also divine weapons among them. Not to mention other things, if you can obtain the acknowledgement of a spirit sword and the spirit sword enters your body, your strength will definitely increase greatly. This is truly a great opportunity. This is the 3rd update, 4th update, noon. Chapter 173. Doesn't that mean only Sword Dao experts can enter the sword testing stage and obtain the chance to choose a master? Yu Yao pondered in her heart, but she wasn't too disappointed. On the side, Yu Hong's beautiful face revealed a trace of sadness. How could she not be disappointed when a great opportunity was right in front of her eyes but she couldn't obtain it? That person is also a Sword Dao expert. I think he won't miss this opportunity. Yu Yao thought of a figure she hadn't seen in a long time. That figure made her feel both hatred and fear, as well as a trace of complicated feelings. Yu Yao's beautiful eyes looked around in a daze. Half a year ago, that person was in dire straits. He was abandoned by his family, hunted down, despised, and insulted by others. And she, Yu Yao, was high above. She was the daughter of the Yu family. She was an existence that countless people had to look up to. But after Shanha City, everything changed. No one would have thought that the youth who was criticized as trash by the family and trampled under their feet would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat step by step. He rose to the top and became the head of all stars colleges many geniuses had to look up to. And she, Yu Yao, relied on her extraordinary methods and had some achievements. But compared to that person, she was still far behind. Xue Fei, who was showing off in Shanha City, Qin Tianjiao became his foil. The insufferably arrogant young marquis and Lu Qinghe, who even she couldn't touch, were cut down by his sword. Lu Canyang, who was high above, was also trampled under that person's feet. Xiao Yuchan, who was praised as perfect and most likely to win, was also schemed against by that person and snatched away the azure dragon's head that he regarded as his. Even her backer, Princess Du Pingxia, took the initiative to befriend that person. The square was bustling with noise and excitement, and discussions could be heard everywhere. Yu Yao looked around and glanced at the crowd. However, she didn't see that familiar figure in the end. Yu Yao. At this moment, a pleasant voice rang in Yu Yao's ears. Yu Yao looked up and saw a peerlessly handsome young master with red lips and white teeth walking over. This youth was extremely beautiful and had an elegant demeanor. Yet there was a vigorous heroic spirit on his body. His every move was elegant and calm. This was a youth with a devilishly beautiful appearance. Even women would feel ashamed when they saw him. The person who came was none other than the great Yan Kingdom's Princess Du Pingxia. Your Highness! Yu Yao and Yu Hong bowed slightly in greeting. There's no need to be so restrained. I've already said that I'm not Great Yin Country's princess here. If you're willing, you can just call me Big Sister. Looking at Yu Yao and Yu Hong, Du Pingxia couldn't help laughing. Yu Yao and Yu Hong looked at each other and nodded in unison. Big Sister, Du Pingxia said. He hasn't arrived yet? Yu Yao knew who Du Pingxia was referring to and shook her head. Du Pingxia asked again. Which geniuses came this time? Her gaze was calm, but there was a natural majesty contained within. Many young girls revealed looks of admiration. Du Pingxia had his own circle of friends in All Stars College. A few days ago, Du Pingxia had joined the Sky Sea Pavilion, which was one of the top 10 teams in All Stars College. This had made many girls think highly of him. At this moment, Du Pingxia had her own influence and her own team. Naturally, Yu Yao was one of Du Pingxia's trusted aides. She had a lot of resources in her hands. Although her cultivation wasn't outstanding, she had great power. Even the slightest movement in All Stars College couldn't escape her notice. The ones who came this time are all experts in the way of the sword. Our Azure Dragon Institutes Yuan Daozhen and Li Qiubai are both here. The two of them seem to have entered the Sword God Mountain Villa before. In the past 2 months they have shown great improvement in their strength. Sword God Villa, one of the 6 great secret realms. The two of them actually had such an opportunity? Du Pingxia's eyes were filled with surprise. Although she was surprised, Du Pingxia didn't lose her composure. After all, her cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds in the past 2 months. She was confident that her progress wouldn't be weaker than the two of them. As for the others, Lu Canyang and Xiao Yuchan should be here as well. However, they are hiding in the dark. According to our deduction team's conclusion from the traces of their battle with Qin Feng, their Sword Dao realm isn't lower than Li Qiubai and Yuan Daozhen. These two have hidden their strength well. The two of them are here as well? Xiao Yuchan seems to have entered the Peach Blossom Villa. I heard that he seemed to have an opportunity as well? Yu Yao nodded. Her eyes glowed as she was confident. Yes. According to reliable sources, Xiao Yuchan's strength has improved rapidly in the past 2 months. They are the top geniuses in the Azure Dragon Institute. Their foundation is solid. Once they calm down and cultivate, they will definitely improve by leaps and bounds. However, these people are only the Sword Dao experts on the surface. There must be some who aren't inferior to this batch of geniuses in the dark. It's just that those people are hiding their strength. Yu Yao's expression was grave as she voiced out her guess. You are talking about the experts who have donated their lives. I know these experts. Among these people, there is a group of experts who aren't inferior to the top geniuses like us. They are hiding in the dark and cultivating diligently. They want to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Then, 3 months later, they will seize the seat of first seat in one fell swoop. They think that they are hiding it well. Little do they know that their performance is in my eyes. You don't have to worry about this. Du Pingxia's eyes flashed with traces of luster. She was confident. This kind of temperament was like a stabilizing needle. Are there any outstanding sword Dao experts in the other institutes? Yu Yao said, there are many experts in the sword Dao present here. If we were to divide the young sword Dao experts present into 3 classes, then the group of sword Dao experts that are flaunting their prowess and making a huge fuss are mostly in the 3rd class. Yu Yao's voice wasn't soft. Many geniuses heard her evaluation. Many youths looked over. Near the sword testing stage, Tuoba Yi, Yuan Daozhen, Wan Jianxing, Wan Gi, and a few unfamiliar sword Dao experts looked over. Their gazes seemed to have lightning and stars flickering in their eyes. Shang Guanyun, Fu Yifei, Li Qiubai, Lu Kenyang, Bai Zhanfeng, Yao Yu, and a dozen other sword Dao experts might be in the 2nd class. When this ranking was announced, many young experts were surprised. These people were the top sword Dao experts. They were actually only in the 2nd class? A few sword Dao experts' eyes instantly turned sharp as they felt uncomfortable in their hearts. Many sword Dao experts shook their heads and didn't comment on this ranking. After speaking, Yu Yao glanced at Du Pingxia. Du Pingxia said, there's also me. You don't have to worry about this. Du Pingxia admitted openly. Du Pingxia was very confident in his sword Dao. But compared to those monstrous geniuses who specialized in sword Dao, Du Pingxia knew that there was still a gap. Yu Yao smiled. Big sister, you're too modest. Du Pingxia said. But I'm very curious. Why did you rank Xiao Yuchan in the 1st class? Because none of us can see through this person. Yu Yao's answer surprised Du Pingxia. Du Pingxia was very clear about Yu Yao's ability. Although Yu Yao was born in a small family clan, her wisdom, insight, and means were all 1st class. Especially after being defeated by a certain person 3 times, it was as though she had been tempered. In addition to the resources that Yu Yao currently had, very few people could escape her eyes. Xiao Yuchan was indeed extraordinary. Looks like your evaluation of Xiao Yuchan is extraordinarily high. Du Pingxia glanced at Yu Yao. Then who is in the 1st class? The 4 academies' heads? Ling Dushu? Or those mysterious disciples from Xingqian school? I don't know about the 1st class either. Yu Yao's reply was out of everyone's expectations. This is the 4th update, the 5th update is a little late. While working, I maintain a high intensity of update. The author is using all her strength. Finally, I'll yell at the top of my lungs. It's Friday. Please recommend, please collect, please reward. Chapter 174. First, I don't know. This answer was unexpected. At this moment, a voice was heard. You mean you can't see through them? Yu Yao raised her eyebrows and looked towards the source of the voice. She saw a quick-witted young man in short clothes walking over with a smile. Beside the young man, there was another young man with an ordinary face who was silent and wore linen clothes. Zhao Zhijing. Du Pingxia looked over as well. This young man wasn't unfamiliar to the young ladies of the Azure Dragon Institute. Zhao Zhijing was known as the know-it-all. Everyone in the Azure Dragon Institute knew about him. In terms of reputation, Zhao Zhijing wasn't inferior to the top geniuses like Du Pingxia. This young man was clever and clever. He was quick-witted and enthusiastic. In the All-Stars College, he was like a fish in water. The group of people only swept a glance at the silent young man beside them before ignoring him. Only Yu Yao from Mountain River City and Yu Hong took a few more glances at this young man. Li Zhuang. Among the 7 young men from Mountain River City who entered the All-Stars College, he was the only one who came from a humble background. However, she only took a few more glances. Can't see through them? Du Pingxia and the others were deep in thought. Regardless of whether it was the 4 seats, Xiao Yuchan, or the sword Dao experts hidden in the dark, weren't they all unfathomable? They were like the moon in the water or the flower in the mirror. However, their strength was obvious. Zhao Zijing's words hit the nail on the head. Yu Yao also gave a perfect explanation. Their levels are too high. Whether it's the first seats of the 4 great academies, Sword King Ling Dushu, Tuoba Yi Yuan Daozhen, Xiao Yuchan, or some other experts, their cultivation levels have exceeded the standard that we can judge. Yu Yao's words resonated with many young geniuses. At the end of the sword Dao, who would be the peak? Many gazes fell on Tuoba Yi and Yuan Daozhen following Yu Yao's words. Some sword Dao geniuses were eager to try. They wanted to test the edge of the sword. Tuoba Yi grinned and a violent sword qi surged. No one dared to take the edge of the sword qi. Yuan Daozhen's aura was even more prominent. He was like a sacred sword that could split a sword. No one could look directly at him. These 2 sword qis were very terrifying, and many sword Dao experts felt a kind of pressure out of nowhere. What first class, second class, I think you're just bragging. I don't believe that Qin Feng can also be ranked first class. He's only an ordinary martial artist of the 8th heavenly layer. If he didn't rely on luck, how could he become the head of the Azure Dragon Academy? How could he be ranked first class? A sneering voice came from the crowd as a purple-clothed youngster angrily said. He was Qin Tianjiao from the Qin clan in Shanha City. Qin Tianjiao was miserable these days. She hated Qin Feng to the core. Many geniuses raised their eyebrows. This person's courage was not small. He actually dared to directly question Azure Dragon's first seat. Yu Yao said, Qin Feng is indeed very strong. Being able to become the first seat of the 4 great academies is definitely not a fluke. I don't think so. Although the 4 heads were the first to pass the trial among us new students, being able to pass the trial and become a head doesn't necessarily mean that they are the strongest. Who knows, there might be someone who relied on schemes and tricks to get through. Even if he has some skills, I'm afraid that's all there is to it. Right at this moment, an icy cold voice sounded out. Everyone's gazes followed the sudden surge of the voice. The crowd opened up a path, and a handsome and slender figure walked out from the middle of the crowd. This was a 15 or 16-year-old youngster with a handsome appearance. He raised his head slightly, carrying a sheathed longsword on his shoulder. His gaze swept across the crowd, and a disdainful smile hung on his lips. Who is this kid? He actually dares to speak like this? What an arrogant kid! Isn't he afraid of offending the Azure Dragon Academy's first seat? Many people were puzzled. He's Ao Feng, the youngest son of Zhu Zigua's current emperor Ao Qin. Someone recognized the youngster's identity and exclaimed in a low voice. This person's background is very strong. Hiss, it's actually him, Ao Feng. This person is one of the strongest people from the Azure Dragon Academy who didn't participate in the trial. No wonder. I've also heard of him. Ao Feng was born in Zhuzigua and is a disciple of the Zhuzigua's royal family. He's been smart since he was young, and his talent in swordsmanship is extremely high. He's deeply favored by several old monsters in the Zhuzigua's royal family. His swordsmanship is the essence of those old monsters. However, I've heard that although this person's swordsmanship is extremely high, he's very arrogant. One of the strongest donors of this year's Azure Dragon Academy. This title was somewhat harsh to the ears, especially the 2 words donor. Ao Feng coldly swept his gaze across the crowd, and a trace of a sneer flashed in his eyes. Someone came forward to greet him, but Ao Fong didn't even look at this person and walked straight past him. He walked towards the sword testing stage. This person wanted to enter the sword testing stage? Bang bang! At this moment, two figures on the sword testing stage rolled onto the ground like cannonballs. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the two of them lay on the ground dispiritedly. Lin Qing and Sun Ji also failed. A shout came from the crowd. The two youths who fell to the ground seemed to be extraordinary. Lin Qing and Sun Ji also had a small reputation in All Stars College. These two were the geniuses of the Tortoise Academy. In terms of reputation, they were slightly higher than Nangong Ling, who had been blasted out previously. Both of them were the sons of aristocratic families, and each of them was originally a famous genius. At this moment, they looked very embarrassed. Two pieces of trash. Ao Fong coldly glanced at the two people at his feet. Hearing this, Lin Qing and Sun Ji's faces turned pale, and they glared at Ao Fong with hatred. This was too hurtful. Ao Fong walked onto the sword testing stage. He walked with a majestic gait, and a wisp of sword energy appeared on his body. Under the gaze of tens of thousands of people, he stepped onto the square. Many youths shut their mouth. This Ao Fong actually succeeded in walking onto the sword testing stage. This was very shocking. Ao Fong indeed had the qualifications to be proud. Many geniuses' eyes flickered, and their expressions were dignified. Ao Fong is not simple. Du Pingxia nodded. I don't think so. According to Miss Yu Yao's ranking, I think this Ao Fong is at most ranked third. This kind of trash really thinks that he's unparalleled in the world. A heat wave came and the crowd was in an uproar. A red-robed figure flashed and appeared beside Du Pingxia. Lu Chunyang, you're here too? Of course, how can I, Lu Chunyang, miss out on such a lively scene? Lu Chunyang's eyes were blazing, and his red robe made him look like a fiery demon king. His whole body was emitting a terrifying heat. Many people stayed away from this battle maniac. Is my brother here yet? Qin Feng isn't here yet. Du Pingxia glanced at Lu Chunyang. At this moment, Lu Chunyang's body was still emitting the aura of the sun's fire, but it was much more restrained. Obviously, his cultivation had improved greatly. His attainment in the path of fire had become more profound, so he could restrain his fire aura. Ao Fong heard Lu Chunyang's voice, and his eyes flashed like lightning, carrying a chilling intent. Lu Chunyang didn't show any signs of weakness. Two small suns seemed to be burning in his eyes, and his temples were bulging. Ao Fong snorted coldly, turned around, and walked toward the sword testing stage step by step. His figure was tall and straight, and he carried a long sword, walking calmly. Bang! His long sword fell to the ground, and a surge of sword energy erupted from his body. Clang! 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 The huge black sword on the side of the cauldron seemed to be stimulated by this wisp of sword energy, and a wisp of brilliance fell from the black sword. Ao Fong's body shook, and the sword energy that erupted from his body instantly expanded by 10 times, dozens of times. In the sky, the wind and clouds were surging. At the same time, countless long swords on the sword mountains began to hum excitedly, as if they were going to fly out of the sword mountains, descend on the square, and choose this person as their master. Sword energy soars into the sky, the wind and clouds change color, and the spiritual swords choose their masters. Countless people looked up and looked over. Beside Du Pingxia and the others, Zhao Zhijing nodded repeatedly. He seemed to have seen through the mystery of this change, and he said to the people beside him, "Let's see how many types of phenomena Ao Fong can trigger. The more phenomena he triggers, the more spiritual swords he can attract." Sword energy soars into the sky is the first type, the wind and clouds change color is the second type, the third type should be thunderbolts, and the fourth type should condense swords into rain. This is the 5th update. Thank you for voting, my brothers. I'm exploding and exploding for you. There are 2 more updates later tonight. Chapter 175. The clouds surged and the sun and moon dimmed. The wind and clouds in the sky were stagnant, as if dark clouds were gathering and thunder was raining down. What a terrifying phenomenon! Is this the strength of a top sword Tao expert? In the crowd, many sword Tao experts held their breaths and looked at the sky in horror. Young Master Ao is indeed extraordinary. Yu Hong's beautiful eyes fell on Ao Fong, and a trace of brilliance flashed in her eyes. Rumor has it that a true expert can trigger 9 phenomenons, but Ao Fong can only trigger 2 phenomenons. He's just a third-rate sword Tao expert. To think that Ao Fong dared to challenge the 4 heads so arrogantly. I don't know if I should call him arrogant or stupid, Zhao Zhijing muttered in his heart with a smile on his face. At this time, he could not offend a woman, especially a woman who was attracted to him. 100 steps away, Tuoba Yi looked at this scene coldly. Yuan Daozhen looked straight ahead like a stone statue. Wan Jianxing and Wan Gi looked at each other and shook their heads as if they were telepathically connected. In the sky, the 3rd phenomenon formed for a moment and collapsed instantly. At the same time, 2 or 3 streaks of light flew over from the sky. Upon closer inspection, they were spiritual swords flying over from the Sword Mountain. 3 spiritual swords appeared in mid-air one after another like swimming dragons, circling Ao Fong with spirituality. This was the spiritual swords choosing their master. Ao Fong's talent in the sword Tao was extraordinary, and he actually attracted the attention of 3 spiritual swords. Everyone's gaze fell on the 3 spiritual swords. The quality of spiritual swords was also divided into different grades. The higher the grade of the spiritual sword, the stronger its spirituality. When it flew, the light it emitted became purer and brighter. These 3 spiritual swords had a faint spiritual glow, and they should be elementary spiritual swords. However, even elementary spiritual swords were hard to come by. These spiritual swords could be upgraded if they were fed by their master. Ao Fong's eyes were solemn as he tried his best to release sword qi, testing each spiritual sword that was most suitable for him. However, in the next moment, Ao Fong's expression changed drastically, and the 2 sword lights in the sky flew away one after another. The spiritual swords returned to their sheaths. These 2 spiritual swords obviously looked down on Ao Fong. Many experts could not help but mourn for Ao Fong when they saw this scene. In the air, there was only the last spiritual sword glowing with a faint golden light. This spiritual sword circled around Ao Fong, still hesitating. Ao Fong was anxious. This was the last spirit sword, and if this spirit sword flew away, he would gain nothing today. Ao Fong activated his sword qi with all his might. With the support of the black sword, the sword qi around him condensed into a faint golden sword light. He was like a pale golden heavenly sword. The last spirit sword hesitated for a long time before it finally stopped hesitating and transformed into a wisp of flowing light that fell into Ao Fong's hand. Clang! At the same time, a strange sword flew out from Ao Fong's back. This spirit sword flew out from Ao Fong's hand and cut the strange sword into several pieces. A mountain cannot have 2 masters, and a master does not choose 2 swords. This was the tyrannical aspect of a spirit sword. Seeing this, Ao Fong was not only not angry, but was instead overjoyed. Everyone looked at Ao Fong enviously. This was a spiritual sword that was hard to get even with 10,000 gold. A spirit sword only had 1 master in its life. Unless the sword master died, it would never serve a second master. Such a treasure, such an opportunity, for the new students of All Stars College, was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they wanted to get another spirit sword, they would have to have another special opportunity. Ao Fong walked down. With a blush on her pretty face, The girl in colorful clothes endured her shyness and was the first to congratulate him. Congratulations, young Master Ao, for obtaining a sword. Ao Feng's gaze was all on the new spirit sword. Holding the spirit sword, his eyes were infatuated and did not notice the girl's greeting. When Ao Feng walked past Lu Chunyang, he looked at Lu Chunyang with a cold smile and an awe-inspiring arrogance. What do you think? Lu Chunyang gave tit for tat. What do you think? What's a mere low-grade spirit sword? When my brother arrives, he will trample you like a dog. Your brother, where is your brother? Ao Feng sneered. His eagle-like eyes were filled with chilliness. Don't worry, he will come when it's time. He won't bother with a small character like you. Lu Chunyang's eyes were filled with flames. If he did not follow the rules of All Stars College, he would really want to beat this person up. Ao Feng laughed loudly. I think he's afraid, hiding in the cave and not daring to come out. Lu Chunyang was furious. Seeing that Lu Chunyang was about to explode, Du Pingxia stepped forward and pulled him back. You can't fight here. Ao Feng glanced at Du Pingxia and glanced at the few people who were glaring at him. He sneered and turned away. Yu Yao also walked up and looked at Ao Feng's back. Finally, her gaze fell on the girl in colorful clothes who was disappointed. Cousin? Are you okay? I'm fine. Yu Hong endured the disappointment in her heart and shook her head. Yu Yao followed her gaze and glanced at that figure. After hesitating for a moment, she finally persuaded. Cousin, this person is too arrogant and condescending. He's not suitable for you. Frowning, Yu Hong's face revealed a trace of displeasure. Seventh sister, what nonsense are you talking about? Young Master Ao is not such a person. This is just the prejudice of others against him. Seeing Yu Hong's expression, Yu Yao held back the words that were about to come out of her mouth. On the sword testing stage, seeing that Ao Feng had successfully obtained the spirit sword, the surrounding gazes became fiery. An unusually handsome martial artist walked out. He was dressed in white and looked like a gentleman. He was handsome and had a gentle smile on his face. Many girls looked at him and called out his name. Shangguan Yun. Shangguan Yun's performance was even more shocking. His sword energy was filled with righteousness, like a gentleman. A total of 3 phenomena appeared one after another. There were a total of 6 spirit swords that were faintly glowing. In the end, a white jade spirit sword inlaid with gems chose him. This spirit sword emitted a threatening spirit light and spirit energy. It was open and aboveboard and suited Shangguan Yun very well. As this spirit sword chose its master, the other 5 spirit swords flew out one after another. Shangguan Yun got his wish and obtained the most suitable spirit sword. This made many geniuses restless. This was a real feast. Once they obtained a suitable spirit sword, their strength would increase greatly. A few youths who had a certain level of cultivation walked out of the crowd and walked toward the sword testing stage. In the next moment, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground could be heard. A few black figures flew out and several people vomited blood at the same time and flew back. They lay on the ground groaning and groaning, unable to get up for a while. This made many people wake up from their frenzied state. These geniuses were not unknown people. Each of them was quite famous in All Stars College. The best of them were even known as the strongest of the All Stars College's younger generation. However, the result was still regrettable. These people's sword Dao realms are not low. Some of them have already touched the second realm of sword Dao. 10,000 swords returned to origin. Unfortunately, they are still not strong enough. Zhao Zijing shook his head. It was not easy to get onto the sword testing stage. It was too rare to be able to comprehend the second realm of sword Dao at such a young age. It was very difficult for ordinary swordsmen to reach this step without decades or even centuries of foundation. Only those monsters could get onto the sword testing stage. Ao Feng indeed had the right to be arrogant. After nearly 10 sword Dao experts got their spirit swords to recognize them as masters, Du Pingxia walked onto the sword testing stage under everyone's gaze. The phenomenon caused by Du Pingxia was very shocking. It actually reached the 4th level. 7-colored sword energy soared into the sky, the wind rose, the clouds surged, and thunder roared. Countless sword energy melted and turned into streaks of light spots, falling down like a rain of swords. Nearly 8 spirit swords were activated. In order to compete for this sword master, the 8 spirit swords even fought. It was not until the strongest 7-colored spirit sword defeated the other spirit swords that the other spirit swords left reluctantly. This scene shocked everyone. There will be an update later. Please recommend, please collect. Chapter 176. A rainbow-colored sword chi soared into the sky, and the whole valley seemed to be shrouded in rainbow-colored light. A rainbow-colored spiritual sword fell into Du Pingxia's hand like a swimming fish. A stream of void chi was drawn down from the void and poured into Du Pingxia's body. Du Pingxia's cultivation of 9th heavenly layer instantly broke through. Rumble! A violent aura broke out. The 2nd divine gate of martial path was opened. The aura of 10th heavenly layer of martial path broke out. Many geniuses stared at this scene with their eyes wide open, full of disbelief. Middle-grade spiritual sword. Watching this scene from 100 steps away, Shangguan Yun's expression could not remain calm. This rainbow-colored spiritual sword turned out to be a mid-grade spiritual sword. The most precious thing about a mid-grade spiritual sword was that it could assist the sword owner in cultivation and draw in the void chi from the void. Having a mid-grade spiritual sword was equivalent to having one more help in cultivation. This ability of a middle-grade spiritual sword was something that a primary-grade spiritual sword couldn't possess. Everyone's eyes fell on Du Pingxia, with undisguised passion, jealousy, and envy. Du Pingxia's aura calmed down, and her eyes burst out a colorful light. In an instant, she was like a rainbow-colored goddess with unparalleled majesty. A heaven-sent opportunity. Du Pingxia did not expect that she could gain the favor of a mid-grade spiritual sword. Du Pingxia's beautiful eyes could not hide a trace of joy. With a spiritual sword to protect herself, her combat effectiveness would more than double. Congratulations, big sister. Congratulations on obtaining a divine sword. Yu Yao was the first to come up. The other girls congratulated her one by one. Congratulations, big sister. Congratulations, big sister. Beautiful girls came up one by one, forming the most beautiful scenery in the square of Lingjian Peak. In other colleges, many girls quietly asked their companions about the origin of this beautiful girl dressed as a man. Many geniuses cast their gazes in this direction. Their eyes burned with passion as they looked at the graceful and seductive young ladies. However, most of the gazes fell on the peerless beauty dressed as a man in the middle. In the dark, several famous figures of All Stars College had been staring at this place. Seeing Du Pingxia obtain the rainbow-colored spiritual sword, one of them could not help but sigh. The Guangling sword has actually appeared. This spiritual sword has been buried in Lingjian Peak for hundreds of years, and finally, it has seen the light of day again. Another elder glanced at this person and sneered. I wonder what the person from Heart Moon Peak will think when he learns of the birth of this sword. Another expert with a red face cursed angrily. His eyes flashed with anger. Feelings my ass. If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have fallen. This bastard has been on a meteoric rise all these years. He has women on his left and right and is very carefree. How could he still remember her? I can't wait to beat him up. The legendary figure who spoke first sneered. That's enough, you're just bragging. With just you, he can beat you up with just one hand. That person was able to arm wrestle with the sect leader 100 years ago. After a few hundred years, I'm afraid he's already very close to that realm. The red-faced expert's expression was gloomy as he gritted his teeth. Although the three experts were bickering, their gazes fell on Du Pingxia, their eyes filled with traces of reminiscence. After Du Pingxia stepped down from the sword testing stage, Lu Kanyang stepped up immediately. Lu Kanyang's face was gloomy. Since he was defeated by Qin Feng once, Lu Kanyang's face had never been cheerful. Lu Kanyang's realm of sword principle was not low. His cultivation was the seven swordsmanship inherited from the seven swordsmanship ancestors of the ancient times. On the sword testing stage, three strange phenomena broke out one after another. 7 sword shadows seemed to appear one after another on Lu Kanyang's body. The sword shadows merged into one and turned into a giant sword. 7 swordsmanship technique. As soon as the ferocious sword Qi, which was full of the will to destroy heaven and earth, appeared, it caused the wind and clouds to change color. Rumble! The sword Qi soared to the sky, the wind and clouds changed color, and thunder rolled. Seeing that the fourth strange phenomenon was about to appear, Lu Kanyang summoned his remaining strength and displayed his sword principle realm without reservation. Clang! 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 7 spiritual swords flew from the sword mountain like flowing light. Among them, there was a jet-black spiritual sword that exuded a fierce evil spirit that was very eye-catching. It was also an intermediate spiritual sword. Lu Kanyang was overjoyed, but his joy quickly froze. This intermediate spiritual sword circled around him a few times and then flew away with a whoosh. Lu Kanyang almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he saw this. Lu Kanyang's willpower was very strong. He resisted the urge to go berserk in his heart. Lu Kanyang quickly reacted. The problem was still with him. Since I lost to Qin Feng in the battle last time, there has been a demon in my heart. There has been a flaw in my sword intent. I originally thought that this was a small matter, and that it would only take some time to erase this demon. Now it seems that the spiritual sword has felt this flaw and gave up on me. Thinking in his heart, Lu Kanyang was very angry. He hated Qin Feng to the bone. In the end, there was still a primary spiritual sword that chose to recognize him as its master. However, Lu Kanyang felt very disgusted. When he walked down the stage, Lu Kanyang pulled a long face. His confidants went up to congratulate him. Lu Kanyang angrily kicked a few of his confidants and left. What's wrong with Lu Kanyang? Isn't he happy that the spiritual sword has recognized him as its master? Yu Hong and the other girls were puzzled. They felt that Lu Kanyang was very temperamental. The expressions of the girls changed. They were Lu Kanyang's admirers and were about to congratulate him. Lu Kanyang's actions were like a bucket of cold water being poured over their heads. Du Pingxia smiled. She could see through Lu Kanyang's thoughts. Next, Fu Yifei by Zhan Feng, Yao Yu, and the others all went up. Most of the spiritual swords they triggered were secondary phenomena and tertiary phenomena. Most of them were able to obtain spiritual swords that were compatible with their cultivation. Only when Yao Yu went up there was an accident. The 3 spiritual swords that he attracted actually flew away after flying around him a few times. Yao Yu was unwilling to accept this and wanted to trigger the sword Qi again. However, when he went up the stage for the second time, he was sent flying by the black sword. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood and was severely injured on the spot. After Yao Yu was carried off the sword testing stage. Suddenly, the crisp cry of a bird came from the sky. The sound of the bird cry was very special. The bells in the palace, the spirit spring in the mountains, and the strings in the wind could not match the charm of this bird cry. It's the phoenix cry. In the dark, the 3 famous figures of All Stars College opened their eyes, and a trace of shock flashed through their eyes. Could it be that the divine bird phoenix had come? Divine bird phoenix? In Xingchen School, there didn't seem to be any powerhouse who had such a divine beast by his side. In the square, everyone's eyes could not help but be attracted by this crisp phoenix cry. At this time, A red glow appeared in the sky in the south, and a red streamer seemed to be approaching from afar. The next moment, a group of flames suddenly appeared in the sky above Lingjian Peak. Her brows were like crimson feathers, her skin was as white as snow, her waist was as white as silk, and her teeth were as white as shells. Her red robes were like fire, and she was graceful and charming. Her flame-like beautiful eyes swept across the area, and in an instant, it was as if flowers had bloomed. She was indescribably beautiful, like a peerless demon god. This is the second update. The third update will be in the morning. Please recommend it. Please save it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.